board has to make that motion. Did Henry talk to him about it? See, I'm not in briefing anymore, so I don't know what they do.
Is Chris in there? Does Chris get to sit down?
Hi. Thank you. Stephen, you need to fill out the pink card. The pink one up there, is it on Sac board? Fill out the pink card. Could you do that for me, please? Thank you. Jeffrey, I need you to move back because I can't see the board, please. Okay. Okay, well, it is. Thank you, Jeffrey.
That is college, Cordova Town. Wait, Cordova Town Center.
Yeah. Okay, this is ready to go if we need it.
Okay, welcome everybody. We will call to order the February 25th meeting of the Regional Transit Board of Directors. Would the clerk please call the roll and establish quorum?
Director Budge?
Here.
Director Hanson?
Here.
Director Harris?
Here.
Director Howell?
Here.
Director Hume?
Here.
Director Jennings?
Here.
Director Miller?
Here.
Director Natoli? Director Chenier? Director Cerna? Chair Kennedy.
Here.
With that, we have a quorum at 100 votes. This meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel. Tonight's meeting will air on Wednesday, February 27th at 6 p.m. and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. It is also closed captioned. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker card located at the rear of the room and provide it to me or Adam. Please speak into the microphone and state your name for the record. We would appreciate everyone turning off their cell phones. Thank you.
Thank you. And would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And might I say that was one of the most enthusiastic pledges of allegiance I've heard in a long time.
With that, we have the consent calendar items 1 through 4.
I'll move consent.
Are there any questions, issues, concerns? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Next item, please.
Motion carries by 100 votes. The next item is public addresses the board on matters not on the agenda.
Mike Birnbaum.
We're going to turn it on.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Board President Kennedy, Vice President Hanson, honorable members. Mike Birnbaum, a volunteer community transit ambassador. The week of March 11th through 15th, I'll be out working the stat crew with the Big Sky Conference men's and women's basketball tournaments in Boise, Idaho. And being up there, we'll be representing our Big Sky member, Sacramento State, men's and women's basketball there. So with that in mind, want to bring everyone a little up to date on some stuff on the calendar. Most of it will occur prior to March 25th. So go with the latest date and work backward, and then one note at the end. On Friday, March 22nd in Stockton will be the meeting of the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority, and that will be in the board chambers of the San Joaquin Council of Governments on East Weber Avenue, near the ACE station, but it is also within walking distance of the Amtrak station in Stockton. On March 18th at 6 p.m. On Florin Road at Woodbine is the next meeting of the Paratransit Board of Directors meeting. And probably the biggest one coming up is going to be a meeting this Wednesday at 6 p.m. I would like to invite the board to the Elk Grove City Council meeting, which folks will hear item 10.1 after a series of public hearings. This is a continuation of the meeting held in December, which folks have worked on very long and hard hours to come to a consensus and bring an item to the council, looking forward to contracting, annexation, and regionalization of paratransit services going forward. So we hope, if your schedule allows, again, that's this Wednesday at 6 p.m., 8400 Laguna Palms Way in Elk Grove. And then the note I wanted to let you know, you're going to have later in your board packet a brief report on the Capitol Corridor Service. Although it is indicated that the next meeting is in April in Martinez on the 17th, the board has had a history of typically canceling the April meeting. If that history does happen to continue, I just want to note for the record that the next meeting then following that on the schedule will be on Wednesday, June 19th in the BART boardroom in Oakland, California. Just so you have everything straightened for your calendar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Jeffrey Tartagia. Do you need a microphone, Jeffrey? Yeah, I think so. Let's get a microphone over to Jeffrey. There you go.
Chairman Patrick Kennedy.
Yes, sir.
Co-chairman, board. I'm hoping you're reading the MAC newsletter, because in there you need to note some things of importance and concern. I will offer right now is this week alone, I went through 5 Connect cards that were not, terminals were not working. The reason I bring up the Mac is because you have a new device that's going to be installed on the blue line. You need to be sure that you know how and what is not functioning, or what is the procedure when it doesn't work. I bring that up. I've brought up before dealing with Sac Valley Station. You need to add another Connect card terminal there if you're going to maintain the Sac Valley, because the east one has been broken repeatedly. And I can put it up this many times just this year alone. And it's either a Friday or Saturday or Sunday, it goes down and it does not get fixed. It's not fixed right now today. So there was no revenue collected from Sac Valley Station unless you went over and figured out the way at the other end to use it. I've taken care of the Elk Grove matter. I've spoken to you before about dealing with 29th Street. Today I had an access issue. I will be sending the, shall we say, Advocacy Committee report about what happened today. And fortunately, Elk Grove is here, so they will speak to the matter of dealing with access for wheelchair and for blind access at that particular location. I'm also happy to report that I took the longest trip of paratransit in my life here, and that ended me up at the Folsom Public Library for Omni Bera's testimony for an hour and describing of what's going on the government level. I've already let Patrick Kennedy know that Omni Bera believes that a infrastructure bill can function even though the dysfunctionality of the federal government. So encourage that, see what we can do, reach out there to Matt and his staff and see what is feasible and possible and getting a clue in of what's going on and happening through there. Went to testified today dealing with certain accessibility issues with the Office of, should we say, Emergency Services. And there is $1 billion that's federal money that is likely coming in there. Don't know that there will be any impact in regard to, should we say, sources there. I will leave the rest alone.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Robert Copeland.
I don't need it.
Thank you, Jeff.
I want to speak as part of Sacramento Tenants Union because RT cannot fix the problems they have. Only you people up here can with more housing. If people can't not afford to go anywhere, they're not going to ride RT. I hope you know this. What Sacramento County needs more housing, and a reason why the people ride the RT bus system, and I don't see it right now. I mean, the whole county has failed. With the rising rents, you're not getting the job done. And I'll speak on another matter. Last week, I was going to a Safeway on 19th Street. And you know those crossings when the light rail goes by? About 3 to 4 minutes, people had to wait. That's intolerable. And then after it got past the 19th Street, it stopped. There's no light rail station on 19th, as far as I know. So you need to fix those problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Next item, please.
Next item is item number 5, resolution approving the renaming of the 39th Street Light Rail Station to the 39th Street UC Davis Health Station, presented by Deborah Salinas. In the back of the room and at your dais is a PowerPoint presentation.
Good evening, Chair Kennedy and members of the RT Board. Tonight, I am very excited to present RT's first revenue-generating light rail station naming proposal. For general reference, I thought I would put this slide up to show where it's located on our system. And then this shows where the station is located in proximity to the UC Davis Medical Campus. The station naming as proposed to you tonight meets all the criteria as set forth in the board-approved naming policy, which states that a station naming would only be considered when a potential sponsor has a geographic, historic, or other connection to a station that would be obvious to SAC-RT customers, and the proposed sponsorship name is part of a street name and or well-known destination that has a strong nexus to the SAC-RT asset. If adopted, the 39th Street station would become the 39th Street UC Davis Health Station, and this is a sample of some signage. Given our long-standing partnership with UC Davis Health and their strong tie to the region and the station itself, as a side note, they offer free shuttle service for patients and employees to and from the 39th Street station to the campus. Staff recommends that the board approve the renaming of the 39th Street station. Thank you, and myself and Pat Neeser here, Director of Partnerships and Development for the Superlative Group, is in the audience. We can answer any questions you might have.
Deborah, how much revenue we generate from this?
The revenue will generate, it's $30,000 a year with a 2% increase each year, so that's roughly $335,000 for a 10-year period.
Great. Mr. Harris.
Well, as it happens, that station is in my district. But the Med Center is in a different council district. Nonetheless, it is used quite heavily by people who work in that area, and I think this is a great idea. I'd like to move approval.
Great, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Harris, second by Director Jennings. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment or have questions? Anybody from the audience? Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Motion carries at 100 votes.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item is item number 6, which has been revised. There's a copy at the dais and in the back of the room for the public. It's an agreement with the City of Elk Grove for transit services. 2 actions before you. Resolution delegating authority to the GM CEO to negotiate and execute the fixed route ADA paratransit dial-a-ride maintenance operations contract for service with the City of Elk Grove. And B, conditionally approving the Second Amendment to the service agreement with the City of Elk Grove, presented by Laura Ham.
Good evening, Chair Kennedy and directors. As Cindy noted, I'm here tonight to present a potential service agreement with the City of Elk Grove. In January of 2005, the City of Elk Grove assumed responsibility from SAC-RT for transit service and formed E-Tran. They later launched E-Van service to fulfill ADA paratransit requirements. A service agreement was also developed at that time to allow Elk Grove access to the SAC-RT service area with its vehicles and services. The agreement also established a proportionate share payment for regional services that benefit Elk Grove, including the SAC-RT light rail system. And it designated 1 representative to the SAC-RT Board of Directors. Elk Grove currently contracts with MV Transportation, Inc., with that contract expiring at the end of the fiscal year. We began discussing the basis for an intergovernmental agreement with Elk Grove back in April of 2017. Since that time, we've done extensive work developing a comprehensive cost proposal, as well as an operations and maintenance plan. And in working together, we've identified a number of benefits, including improved service quality, enhanced employee benefits, economies of scale savings, and a greater ability to collaborate locally on regional transit operations. It's now the optimal time to move forward with a contract with Elk Grove, with the current contract with MV expiring on June 30th. And the nature of an agreement between 2 public agencies also provides us with a good deal of flexibility to negotiate and establish a contract. If approved, SAC-RT would begin contract operation on July 1st with a 5-year contract term. Currently, RT does not have the right to terminate the contract for convenience or request additional compensation if costs exceed estimates. So there's some cost risk, to SAC-RT's operating budget by entering into the contract. The total consideration over the term is approximately $35.8 million. SAC-RT is absorbing $452,000 in startup costs this fiscal year, and that's primarily for onboarding staff prior to the start of the contract, other administrative costs. Payment under the contract will satisfy the proportionate share payment for the life of the contract, which is currently $350,000. This is an important term because it will reduce RT revenue by $350,000. So as I mentioned, the termination clause is important, and some board members have raised questions about this particular clause. So we are presenting a few options to negotiate the termination language in the contract. The first is to keep the existing termination language. Sorry, I feel like I'm bending down here a little bit. Or to change the term to 2 years with 3 one-year options. Or the third option is to add a termination for convenience clause for SAC-RT, so there'd be mutual termination for convenience in the agreement. So under the contract, SAC-RT would be responsible for transit operations and operations support, scheduling and fare revenue collection for fixed route and ADA paratransit services, as well as the maintenance of service revenue vehicles, a portion of a shared city facility, and bus stops. Many of the required key provisions are based on the city's contract with MV. Provisions that we must comply with include keeping key staff positions filled for the duration of the agreement with vacancies of no more than 90 days, The key positions are the operations superintendent, the maintenance supervisor, the operations training specialist, and the data analyst. SAC-RT must provide daily, monthly, and occurrence-based performance reporting to the city. SAC-RT will be subject to liquidated damages for not meeting certain contract requirements. Liquidated damages fall into four main categories as described in the staff report. The first is failure to implement key elements of the transition plan by July 1st. The second is not filling vacancies in key staffing positions within 90 days, as I mentioned. Third is compliance with operational performance metrics after a 90-day implementation grace period. And the fourth is compliance with maintenance performance metrics. Liquidated damages mostly range in amount from $50 to $500. For example, $50 for a first late stop and $500 for failure to pick up passengers. The most severe liquidated damage is $2,500 for failure to pass a CHP inspection. The liquidated damage provisions are described more fully in the written report, as I mentioned. So each party also has responsibility to indemnify for claims and damages due to one another's negligent acts or omissions. It's important to note that Elk Grove has no obligation for claims resulting from SAC-RT's transit operations responsibilities under the agreement. Under the warranty provisions in the agreement, there will be a joint inspection process of all facilities, vehicles, and other items to be supplied by Elk Grove for SAC-RT's use. The inspection period will allow RT to identify and address any material defects. Once we accept the facility and vehicles, the city would make no further warranty, with an exception for several major vehicle components. And the agreement, of course, spells out a number of insurance requirements for SAC-RT, which are covered in detail in the staff report as well. Lastly, here on this slide, the contract provides for SAC-RT to lease and use a portion of the city corporation yard in Elk Grove to perform transit services. So SAC-RT will operate all routes that the city currently identifies as available to the public. This includes 6 local routes, 10 commuter routes, and 4 Saturday routes. The fare structure will remain under city control. SAC-RT will also operate EVAN, the local dial-a-ride service that meets the city's ADA paratransit obligations, providing service to people with disabilities and seniors age 75 and older. EVAN also operates on Sunday when fixed route is not available. In addition, the city and SAC-RT have begun discussions regarding providing regional paratransit services. Riders are currently required to transfer between EVAN and SAC-RT's ADA services, which are provided under a service agreement with Paratransit Inc. SAC-RT will negotiate with Paratransit Inc. to provide all regional trips, providing a one-seat ride to regional paratransit travelers. We anticipate implementing this service in the summer as well, and we'll provide more information as discussions progress. Staffing. All ETRAN employees are currently employees of MV Transportation. The ATU represents operators, dispatchers, customer service, and maintenance staff. Our intent is to invite all current employees who would like to continue service in Elk Grove to apply for positions at SAC-RT. We have authorized 98 new positions for the Elk Grove operation. All MV employees who apply and meet the minimum qualifications for a position would be invited to an interview and offered employment upon successful completion of employment screening and training. Our goal is to make the transition as seamless as possible for those employees. SAC-RT is currently coordinating with the ATU to establish an agreement for the RT employees who would be in the Elk Grove bargaining unit, with the intent of having similar terms to the agreement between ATU and MV. SAC-RT is committed to the city and to ATU that the employees will receive comparable wages, improved medical benefits, and an increase over their current deferred compensation. So this slide shows you a little bit of what the organization structure will look like out in Elk Grove and the contract management structure as well. Under the direction of the SAC-RT Director of Transportation and the City of Elk Grove Transit Systems Manager, an operations superintendent will have primary responsibility for delivery and monitoring of transit operations in Elk Grove, as well as maintenance under the contract, including oversight and supervision of dispatch supervisors, bus operators, maintenance employees, and customer service staff. And here's a transition timeline that shows with board approval this week and city council approval later this week. Personnel recruitment will begin right away, with staff training commencing no later than May 1st for a service start date of July 1. Our executive team, operations management, and other support staff will play key roles in the service transition. We've listed their names and titles here for your reference. So benefits and opportunities. As stated previously, the Sacramento Elk Grove contract will provide improved compensation and benefits to existing staff. With more competitive wages and benefits and a larger pool of available drivers, SAC-RT will likely provide greater driver retention and availability for city transit services, improved service quality, and less service cancellations than are being experienced today. SAC-RT also offers economies of scale through consolidation of certain administrative functions and staff. SAC-RT's experienced transit operations staff will expand the depth and breadth of available resources for city transit service. Additional benefits include the ability to collaborate more effectively on regional transit operations and long-range capital and strategic planning efforts. Contracting with the city will provide SAC-RT the opportunity to understand the city's transit operations and future transit objectives, while still allowing the city to maintain oversight and administration of transit services. Annexation may be considered by the city of Elk Grove after a successful contract term. With annexation, we are an even stronger competitor for regional, state, and local funding, and we look forward to discussing future opportunities. So our recommended action: to delegate authority to the general manager, CEO, to negotiate an agreement, as well as conditional approval of the second amendment to the service agreement with the city of Elk Grove. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I also wanted to mention that Michael Costa, the transit manager for the city of Elk Grove, is in the audience as well.
Laura, I just want to add this. This is a result of an 18-month-long intensive and highly collaborative and professional partnership building process. And there are many key partners, made huge contributions on this, process. I want to, specifically first thank our ATU leadership, because, without the ATU's agreement to keep the almost similar, contract terms like MV, is enjoying, we won't be able to have this contract at all, or this draft contract. So I want to specifically thank, ATU President, Ralph is here, oh, he's not here, but make sure he knows that. And then, the city staff from City of Elk Grove, city manager and transit manager, public works director, attorneys, and other staff. And certainly RT staff. This is a hugely learning experience for us, and we gained a lot. Certainly, we would like to thank the elected officials from both city council, especially our board director and a council member of Elk Grove, Pat Hume, gave us enormous of guidance and support during this 18-month-long process. And our board directors, have been giving us lots of guidance through the process too. So this is a very encouraging and a very exciting process. Depend on the directions, both policy bodies, city council and RT. We will work more seamlessly with city staff, and Michael Costa is there. Stand up, please. He is probably the primary player in this process. So just want to thank the key players. I may forget other players, but I just want to mention these major players, stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I will call Mike Costa.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I have to echo Mr. Lee's comments. It has been a very collaborative process over the last 18 months. I am very grateful to RT's staff, Mr. Lee and the rest of your staff, for the rigorous negotiations that we conducted over the contract. But I think the contract before you is something that we're very proud to support. And if you do have any questions about any of the terms of those contracts, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
All right. Yes, sir, Mr. Hume.
There it goes. Well, I'm almost embarrassed that I'm the one that has to get into the weeds on this, but how do you feel about going to a 3-year term with the 1-year extensions as opposed to a 5-year term?
It would have to be something that we look at. I think one of the things that was a benefit of this contract from the beginning, 18 months ago, was the cost comparison of RT versus MV's contract. And so with the contract being 5 years with SAC-RT, it afforded the city some benefits with some potential cost savings over over MV transportation. Looking at if that contract were to be reopened earlier than the 5 years, we would have to see what type of cost savings we're going to be looking at if SAC-RT wanted to renegotiate compensation or costs prior to those 5 years. So there is a potential change in, if you open the contract earlier than 5 years, in the cost savings that the city estimated between MV and SAC-RT.
And what about the termination clause?
So the termination clause, the benefit in the termination clause is if SAC-RT were to terminate the contract, what would happen is the city of Elk Grove would have to, in order to maintain its transit services, go out and procure a contract. That could take upwards of 9 months minimum time. So if we were to even consider that option, there would have to be some negotiation about notification and giving the city enough time to be able to procure a new contractor before SAC-RT were to leave the property and terminate its services.
And so under that same line of thinking, wouldn't it be reasonable to assume that there's no way the city could execute a 180-day notice?
That's correct.
So then is there a reason why we would have that on our side?
So if the city were to identify 180 days notice, that could be something that the city could that's a good question. That could be something that the city would be looking at, still providing somehow service, but terminating. I'm not sure exactly how that would look, but 180 days, you're right, would be a pretty quick turnaround even for the city if we were to initiate a termination for convenience. So it's a highly unlikely situation that the city would issue 180 days notice of termination of convenience, but it is something that was negotiated during the contract negotiations.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Vice Chair Hansen, followed by Director Natoli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Laura, I have a couple questions for you. One, are these buses branded as SAC-RT or they have a different branding?
They'll retain all the E-Tran branding.
Okay. The staffing, the required staffing that you mentioned, some of it seems duplicative to me of RT existing staff. Is that the case? Like research analyst, I don't totally understand why we would fund a position when we probably already have research analysts.
So these, it's a data analyst is the title. So these positions will be dedicated to Elk Grove, to the Elk Grove operation, and actually sited out in Elk Grove at the Corp Yard. So there's some similar titles, like for example, the superintendent and the dispatcher.
But do we have those type of people already on our staff doing similar work, but maybe not located in Elk Grove?
The data analyst goes a little bit beyond what you might expect by the title. That position actually does a lot of admin support for the division as well. Their daily data entry, the daily logs, manifests, and so forth. The other positions would be duplicate titles, but would need to be assigned out there locally at Elk Grove to manage the day-to-day operations.
So you're saying they're not duplicative?
Correct.
Okay. The liquidated damages provision seems unusual for an agency like us to enter into. Have we ever entered into a contract that allowed another agency to penalize regional transit in this way?
Not in my history here that I recall.
Not in my almost 16 years.
And
have I seen that?
Are there precedents for other public transit agencies to have these kind of private sector conditions imposed on them?
I haven't seen it before.
Okay.
No.
I thought it was pretty unusual. Laura, you skimmed over this, but the $350,000 a year, that's for each year, right, of the contract?
Correct, yes, that's
So,
the current
so the
term.
total cost with the approximately $500,000 that you said would be involved with startup costs to us of this contract is really $2.25 million over a 5-year term?
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. That seems like a lot to potentially take out of other operations for a contract that doesn't seem to be that fair to me. The termination provision was raised, and I tend to think that staff probably should negotiate a stronger termination provision, and I'll make some comments about that. But the paratransit piece is really interesting to me. So if we're potentially taking this contract on at a loss, which it sounds like MV can't operate under the existing conditions, and we're essentially taking their terms, it sounds like we're going to have to, as an agency, subsidize this service. Do we have, other than the termination provision, do we have a way to change that? Because I ask, serving through this board on the paratransit board, if they're expected to come in, how are we going to pay them, make the contract whole, and provide the services when we don't have any control over schedule, fare, or any of these other things, and then potentially have significant liabilities through liquidated damages and other pieces?
I think one option that we can look at when we discuss the termination provisions is potential for reopeners associated with cost. Would we maybe be one way that we could look at that, where we would need to reopen and discuss budget?
Okay, I think that's going to be essential. There's some pieces that I don't believe even the Paratransit Board has given authority to work with RT on this. And I don't know that they're going to be totally interested. I mean, Pat's on that board as well with me. Paratransit's doing a lot to sort of stabilize its services after just doing some cuts. And I don't think Paratransit can subsidize this service either. And I want to make sure that we're not entering sort of excitedly into a contract that's going to be an albatross around our necks potentially. The last thing I would just say is, as much as I am totally in favor of consolidation, I don't believe that this contract represents consolidation. I think it seems to represent us stepping into the shoes of MV under a contract which, to my mind, Pat, isn't very fair. And I honestly don't think we should delegate to the CEO the authority to execute a contract until we see the final terms, especially given the $2.25 million in potential revenue loss over 5 years. The very punitive liquidated damages provisions, which I think are fairly anathema to how we should operate if we're truly in a partnership. The fact that they can begin dinging us, it just doesn't feel that fair as a partner in this, especially when they're making all the rules and we are essentially being treated as a subservient contractor. And I don't think this contract has much fairness in it. And so I probably cannot support it until I find the answers to these questions. We've made such significant cuts to our service. We continue to ask a lot of our riders, whether it's through fares or the potential changes to our routes. As much as I want to see Elk Grove become a full member through annexation, I don't believe that this is a path. This type of marriage is not a path, in my mind, to something fair. And so I didn't expect to feel...
I can say, Member Hanson, it's the only path. So...
Yeah, Mr. Chair, can I
Lee, yes.
address some concerns Vice Chair just raised? First, for paratransit regional service, we would like to sit down with both Director Hanson and Director Hyun to then with Tiffany, CEO of Paratransit Inc. to further talk about this. We have talked about this for the last 6 months, and we feel we have a way to move forward, but we would like to brief you guys in more detail sometime in the near future. So that's first, that's first thing I would like to say. Secondly, in terms of that $350,000, and we actually follow the practices what we have been with City of Central Heights and City of Folsom. when we provide contractual service for Central Heights and Folsom, we did not ask for those type of fees. So we just basically followed the common practices with two cities. But if we did not provide contractual service for Central Heights or Folsom, we would have charged $200 or $350 or $400,000 those fees as the general regional transit services will provide to the two cities. So that's why when we take over the service, then we don't have to charge that $350,000. So that's the second point I want to.
But do we have savings commensurate that offset that?
Actually, the current contract amount is what MV charged to the city. So that's two totally separate issues. Even though we know this $350,000, which we did not provide any service to the.
But do we have savings that justify giving up that $350,000?
Well, we feel the contract amount should be able to cover the cost. We will provide a service to the city of Elk Grove. So that is actually
And if it doesn't, what's the provision? Is this board then going to be asked to subsidize the contract?
That is a good question, but again, that's two separate.
What is that payment supposed to be?
That payment is supposed like a city of Elk Grove enjoins the light rail service to the CRC, those type of stuff. Also, city of Elk Grove, send a representative into our board. So like Director Hansen, the director, him as a board director.
I mean, I love that, but $350,000 a year.
Okay. Wait.
I'll just finish. I'll just finish.
Yeah, Vice Chair Hansen has the floor.
I think, Henry, those are the kind of things that I think prudently and from a fiduciary standpoint, we need to understand how they're going to be. If I would feel better if these were also RT branded buses, because if we're going to take that much risk, we should also enjoy some benefit. And at this point, I don't. So, I'm not going to make a motion at this point, but the motion I would make, if I were, would be to give you the authority to keep negotiating, but to bring back a final contract to us, because I think that this contract isn't ready for our approval yet.
Mr. Vice Chair, we would like to ask city to say if we can put RT's brand on the cars too. In addition to city of Elk Grove, we'll put the brand there. I think city of Elk Grove probably will be agreeable on that. That is the second question. The second point you ask it. The first point you ask about the liquidated damage. We have been hard negotiated with city staff for at least the last 6 months, and the reason the staff brings this up to the board, there are lots of remedies we built into that. For example, give us for any individual liquidated damage, and we have like 2 or 3 times if we made some type of
opportunity to address and resolve, and there's a dispute resolution spelled out tied to the liquidated damages that goes up to the city manager.
So lots of remedies we built into that because of the we don't have enough time to explain those details. In terms of termination by convenience, staff would like to request about 9 months from our side, termination by convenience with 9 months advanced notice, because city just mentioned 6 months is not enough. So we those type of details we have been really trying to negotiate with with city. That's some points I just want to clarify. Yeah.
Director Natoli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question and then some comments. What is the cost that's in the current negotiated contract for the facilities that we would be leasing from the city and the corporation yard? What is that number, roughly?
I believe that there's no. Oh, $1.
I'm glad I asked that.
No charge,
I'm
but
glad I asked that question first because then okay, that's good. So I would just piggyback on a couple items, and I certainly want to commend folks for their effort on this. Obviously, it's been pretty intense, and even with some of the items that have been called out here this evening, I recognize that the clock is ticking as it relates to this because obviously it's July 1st date as least outlined here for current service provider and what was being proposed under the RT contract. I would just say that related to the termination for convenience, though, again, not understanding, but more what I've heard here this evening about back and forth, I think it's important for both entities in a partnership to have reasonable amount of time and certainly circumstances that may not be anticipated at the time we enter in good faith with a contract, assuming we do that. And it was seeming to me from what I heard from certainly Mr. Costa, but also from Henry and from Laura, that maybe rather than 180 days, that there be a comparable 270-day, which is basically the 9 months, that would allow either party to have the ability for convenience, recognizing it is a partnership and hopefully one that people will find for the long term as an arrangement that benefits all parties and certainly the riders and the customers. And so I guess I would suggest that as being something that we ought to consider if you're seeking input here this evening. And the other part of it is that if there was a way to recognizing the offset under the $350,000, and maybe as Director Hume said, that's the only pathway is if that's recognized from the get-go. But with the startup cost being nearly $500,000, $450,000 of unreimbursed startup, if there was some way to soften that, at least in this initial year, otherwise we're going to have to absorb that in, I guess, the upcoming fiscal year, as I understand it. So maybe there's a way to balance that out within the contract negotiations, and maybe it still fits within the overall $35.8 million, but to soften that a bit for at least for this upcoming fiscal year, and or maybe it's part of this current year, seeing to me if there's a way to look at that so that, as we get into discussion later this evening on other items, we're trying to absorb a lot of different things, make a lot of changes. And again, that, of the overall amount, it's a fairly modest amount, but one that RT would have to bear right from the get-go. Also with that loss of revenue that's been a part of the existing arrangement. Recognize this is a new arrangement with a whole lot of different parameters. So I just offer those as comments. But again, recognize this may not be perfect. I certainly think that a lot of work's gone into it, and that if we're interested, obviously this is kind of more than a marriage, it's probably an engagement because it's going to set the tone for whether, folks stay in over the long term. And I think obviously some of the hesitancy that they've resulted in some of the initial foray by the then new city to go off and run their own transportation service for the past 18 going on 19 years. This is an opportunity I think that we certainly couldn't afford to miss, assuming that the details aren't too onerous from the standpoint of regional transit. So those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Chenier.
Go ahead.
Okay, Director Howell.
Is MV, are they a for-profit company?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, they are?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so then maybe some of these, because the way I read the staff report, these, the liquidated damages are basically going along with whatever the original contract was. Yeah. It's one thing to have liquidated damages, in my opinion, with a for-profit company. It's another thing to do it to a public agency. And I have a serious problem with the liquidated damages. Most of the damages could occur for a number of reasons that are completely beyond RT's control. If there's a car accident or some sort of a disaster and a bus is late, RT's got to write a check. I have a serious problem with that.
We're excluding all of those type of out of control conditions.
But so, that's not how I read it here.
Yeah, we did not really,
Yes, we did build in language related to circumstances beyond RT's control in the contract document.
Okay, well, that's one issue, and I have the same problem with the $350,000.
Even within our control, we still have like 1, 2, 3 times, excuses or whatever, something like that, Then if we can change that, within next 15 or 30 days, they're not going to charge us.
It just, it wasn't spelled out that way, and
Yes, sorry about that. It's just
the probability of a bus being late, I would think would be relatively high, and may not be the result of a problem with equipment maintenance or necessarily the personnel involved. And I have a problem with the $350,000 as well.
What is your problem with that?
I don't see why we would take $350,000 out of our existing budget and pay it to the city of Elk Grove, and I don't know what it's intended to accomplish. And I think maybe I'm just coming at this from a different viewpoint, because Folsom ran its own transit system, for 50 years, and we didn't go through this engagement period, as Don referred to it. We got married.
So just
dowry.
just to be clear,
And it's been fully consummated, may I tell you.
just to be clear, RT would not be paying the city $350,000. They would no longer be billing the city $350,000 for the privilege of having a seat on the board. Currently, we pay RT $350,000
For Pat.
I would hope not. As much as I was joking about it earlier, I would hope not. But really, it's because there's light rail close to town, and our riders can use light rail, even though they still have to buy fare media. So, to your question earlier of what is the $350,000 for, I don't really. It's something we've always paid. It's been negotiated amount, but it would simply, we would not be paying RT to provide the contracted service and paying them this extra amount.
I get it,
As
but
a
I guess,
membership due or whatever.
I'm new on the board, and I wouldn't have paid it either way.
So think about it in this way, both Central Heights and Folsom, before we provide service to you guys, to 2 cities, and then, the 2 cities did not pay anything to us. So it's, if we did not provide a service to you, contractual service to 2 cities, then 2 cities would have, paid $350 whatever $1,000 to RT because of the service, the general service like library service or whatever we have provide to the general public for the 2 cities. So it's kind of like we feel it ought to be fair to both sides. If we continue to charge $350,000.
No, I don't think we should be charging them, and vice versa. So. That's all I have.
Again? Okay. All right, anybody else?
Could I ask a clarification
Yes,
on that, though?
Vice Chair
But
Hanson.
I believe aren't there formula funds that flow to the city because they're not a member of regional transit, that that $350,000 payment reflects a portion of coming back to us for that light rail service?
Only if we do not provide a contractual service to the city or cities. In that case, we will ask you for those payment. But now,
If they were fully annexed members, though, what federal funds would flow to us that don't now?
Well,
That's the real.
Yeah, any federal funds will flow to us if fully annexed. Yeah.
Hence the reason for getting married.
Well, they may not want to get married based on this contract.
Anybody?
Bad prenup.
All right. I have no cards on this from the public. What's the will of the board?
Well, I'd just like to make a couple of comments
Yes,
here
sir.
because I feel like I'm being consummated. No, on neither.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: is we've got a sticky widget in Elk Grove because our ridership doesn't necessarily trust RT, and that's why we got divorced to begin with. And they are very weary of the idea that if RT comes over and has carte blanche control of our transit operations, that commuter service is going away, everything is routing to light rail, that when the difficult decisions have to be made, Elk Grove routes will be on the table first, as they were previously. And so it's important to remember there was a reason why Elk Grove wanted to provide transit service
quote-unquote better transit service in the first place. And I will say this, that in my tenure on the board, if it weren't for the influx of Henry's leadership and the turnaround that I've seen happening within RT at this point, I wouldn't be recommending taking this pathway at all. But what we do want to do is dip our foot in the pool first before we jump into full annexation. Toward that end, I can say that the reasons for liquidated damages, and they do exclude some of the things that are beyond their control, is maintaining a little bit of that carrot and the stick to say, we want you to come on board, we want you to provide the transit service, but we also want to make sure that you're providing the quality that our ridership has come to expect. And you're right, it's more common with a private sector than with a public sector, but where I thought you might have been going with that comment is, we've been paying MV to provide this service. They are a for-profit company, so they're making overhead and profit off of what they're providing and what we're paying them. So to use the term subsidize and that this contract is somehow subsidizing Elk Grove, I don't think is a fair assertion. We have negotiated an amount for which RT should provide the service in Elk Grove as a pathway towards annexation. Toward that end, I would like to see either whether it happens under the convenience clause or whether we change the terms of the contract, but I've only signed up for 4 more years, and so I've got 3 to go. I'd like to have those annexation discussions before I'm off that board and this board. So I don't know if we can just kind of have that as a friendly amendment that we can sit down and have those conversations, and it's not a breach of contract by either party. But, you know, I mean, that is the pathway that we're going here, but we have to do it in a way that our riders don't pack our council chambers because they think we're taking their toy away from them.
All right, Director Chenier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to support my colleague here, and with a couple of pieces. One is, I think Mr. Natoli has a good point if we want to go to a mutual 9 months cancellation. I think it needs to be even on both sides, and that seems to be a fair piece that wouldn't hurt either party in a big way. So that would be one piece of direction if the board wants to go in that direction. I also understand, and I've certainly been a part of what's been happening over the last 8 years here and seen the good, the bad, and the ugly in the other direction, which is all good, about what it is. So understanding that there is trepidation among Elk Grove's leadership and the riders themselves about service over time. I don't know if it's possible. I mean, I think the 5-year piece is good, but I also understand that we want to do some check-ins on a yearly basis. And so what I'd like to do is ask if you guys can figure out some triggers. So, for example, on the liquidated damages, if we hit some level or don't hit some level in year 1, maybe it goes away after that. So that I'd like it to be kind of performance-based, where the contract gets more equity over the 5-year period, if we can do it that way. I think there are I don't want to do that from the dais. I'm happy to participate in that type of conversation where we can think about how do we make it so that we can get to the annexation conversation sooner rather than later if RT is performing at the level it thinks it can within this contract. So that would be, I'd love to see this come back with that. I think that is a two-way conversation that makes it more equitable, both for RT and the city. I agree with a lot of what my colleagues have said. We don't want it to be one way, but I also understand that we have to earn the right to move forward on a longer-term basis. So if we can figure out how to do that, keeping the overall parameters of the contract the same for Elk Grove, but look at what we can do to improve it over time. That would be my hope, and I'm going to actually move that as direction for staff to come back with those pieces.
So I was here,
If I can.
Thank you, Director Chenier. I was actually heading in similar direction, and I'd like to actually establish a subcommittee of the board before it comes back to the board in order to be able to hear these issues. And I would like to have Vice Chair Hansen chair that, along with Director Natoli, Director Chenier, and I've got letters here.
Pat Hume.
And Pat Hume, of course. If that would be okay.
I'm happy to do it.
Okay.
Could I just
Yes.
Jay, I just want to clarify what you're saying. So the staff item before us says delegate authority to negotiate and execute. So, my request was that we allow the negotiation to go forward, but that we bring back a final contract. Is that what your motion?
Yeah.
All right, I'll second that.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a comfort level on the board, which doesn't exist.
And I think that vetting it through the subcommittee will provide that.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Chair, just
Yes, sir.
a quick question then.
I
Some-
volunteered you, you know.
No, I'm fine with that. That's okay. But the time sensitivity, I guess, because obviously this is on the council's agenda for Wednesday night, if I'm not mistaken, right, Pat? And so this committee, is it intended that, again, assuming the motion passes, that we're going to have to work pretty feverishly here, I think, because there's a lot of things that have to fall into place, if I'm not mistaken.
We can make it by
Right,
Wednesday night.
Laura?
Yes, so our original timeline, we foresaw that we would gain approval in March, and that will still allow us to meet our July 1 implementation. So we've got a very small cushion. We don't have a lot of cushion, but we do have some time.
Because Friday is March.
Yes. Do you
Okay.
agree with that, Mike?
We have very dedicated members up here that are willing to do that.
Okay.
Ms. Brooks, did you get those names that I?
I did.
Okay.
Vice Chair Hansen, Director Natoli, Director Chenier, and Director Hume.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor.
Chair, if I might.
Yes.
You also have a second item here. If you wanted to approve the conditional second amendment to the service agreement before you, there are two items here
So
you're discussing.
the second amendment to the service agreement is the $350,000 proportionate share payment amendment, so
Right.
I would assume not.
Or would you like to delay all
I
of
believe that will be delayed.
Okay. I just wanted clarification.
So we'll wrap it up.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay? Are we good?
Yep.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Motion carries at 100 votes.
Thank you.
Next item is item number 7, SACRT Forward New Network Service and Title VI Analysis. You have 3 items before you. Resolution approving a Title VI service change equity analysis for weekend light rail frequency improvements and the SACRT Forward Plan. And B, resolution approving weekend light rail frequency improvements that took effect temporarily on January 6, 2019. And C, resolution approving the SACRT Forward New Network Plan. And before you is James Boyle to present.
All right, and I will also, from the onset, I will say that we have a pretty lengthy stack of cards from the public, so we're going to limit public testimony to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. James Boyle, I'm the Director of Planning for Sacramento Regional Transit, and I am here tonight to present to you and talk with you about our new proposed network. We've been working on this for quite a while, and it's an exciting night actually to be up here and to be able to get to talk to you and show you all the hard work that we've done. Mr. Chair, I would like to ask, I have a pretty extensive PowerPoint presentation with lots of great information. So if we could maybe hold questions and then we'll go through at the end and answer all the questions if that would be possible.
James, you got all suited up for tonight, so yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, that's great.
Could have worn my vest.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so tonight I want to talk to you about our project. I want to show you the work we've done. I want to talk about the public involvement. I want to talk about what we've been hearing from the public and what we've heard. So starting off, this is a very big project. There's no question about that. This has significant changes and impacts to almost every route in our system. So there's no doubt that this is a big project. There are a lot of goals associated with projects of this size. For our project, there are a couple of big goals that we want to focus on and keep in mind as we go through this. One, new regional mobility options. There have been a tremendous amount of changes in transportation and transit within the past 10 years, and even more so than that. But just think about the past 10 years. We have Uber, we have Lyft, we have jump bikes all over Midtown and downtown now in East Sacramento. We have scooters now introduced as transportation options in our downtown area. So there's a lot of changes happening to transit. And not only us, but transit agencies across the country are having to rethink the way they do transit and the way they provide really specifically bus service to their citizens. The one goal of the project was to develop an entire new network. We were charged with a blank slate approach. So we started this project from a blank slate. What would it look like to redraw our bus network? Third, engage the public. We have done a tremendous amount of public outreach and we have heard a tremendous amount of public feedback. And I'll go through some of that in detail with you as we go through the presentation. Fourth, the technical analysis in a project like this. It's not to be forgotten about or left behind, but there's a great deal of technical analysis that goes into a project like this. So our job as planners is to try and balance all this. How do we balance what we hear from the public and what we hear from our board and elected officials and what the technical data is telling us? Public involvement. We started our project in August of 17. We did a customer satisfaction survey, and we have been going now for almost a year and a half. Our project was broken up into 3 large phases of public involvement. You can see phase 1 from August of 17 to 2018. And then we had a phase 2 public involvement from October of 18 to December. And then phase 3, which is what we're in now and wrapping up, has gone from December up until tonight's board meeting. We have produced a significant amount of outreach materials that have been distributed throughout our service area. We have had folks on the buses. We have gone out to our transit stations. We have made stuff available online through just a variety of different sources. We have gotten out a lot of information. We believe that we've reached thousands of customers, citizens, riders, employees, stakeholders, and we've also reached internally. We've had several meetings with staff internally and also our bus operators. They provide a great deal of information to us, and we have not forgotten about them. And there's a great deal of more detailed information in your packet regarding the public outreach. Okay. So the next slide really just kind of highlights the public outreach. We've done a great deal of outreach throughout our service area. We have held 47 pop-up events total. We've had over 33 different presentations. We have attended or hosted 20 open houses, workshops, and stakeholder meetings, and those would include meetings with city staff, Rancho Cordova city staff, Citrus Heights staff, and the County of Sacramento. We have posted up to 3 YouTube videos on our website, so we have done a great deal of outreach using YouTube. And we've also used things such as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Nextdoor Post, which reaches several hundred thousands of people within our service area. So all this public outreach, what have we been hearing? It's important to remember that we hear from non-customers and we hear from customers. So this is meant to kind of represent that spectrum of what we hear from folks. We hear a lot about more weekend service. We hear things about more frequent service. But we also hear people talk to us about they want the buses to go to more places. And that is important to people, to be able to have access to schools, to hospitals, to places of employment. We've also heard from our riders and from people who don't ride about having a more consistent bus network that operates and runs 7 days a week. So those are some of the big things that we've heard. So I want to talk to you a little bit about going into some of the details now about the routes and some of the comments we've heard by route. This graph shows number of comments by route, and these are basically the top 5. And I believe probably just by you looking at your emails, you can see some of these things rolling in. We've gotten a great deal of comments, and we addressed some of these at the last board meeting. And so what I'd like to do is just briefly kind of talk about some of these in a little more detail so you can get a sense of, yes, you have a question?
I'm looking ahead at all of your fine work, and it is, as you said, lengthy and extensive. Let's focus on the process and some of the major changes, but I don't know that we need to go route by route. I think we've seen it.
That's good. And I was going to tell you that I didn't intend to spend a lot of time on those route by route maps, but I wanted to make sure that you had them for your knowledge.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Okay, thanks. So again, quickly, Route 3862, we heard a lot of concerns, and we believe we addressed the majority of the concerns. The Route 34, we heard concerns about cutting to peak hour. It's important to remember that on this route, 51% of the riders on this route are concentrated in the peak hour. Route 13, we've gotten a great deal of comments on that. A lot of the concerns revolve around cutting service through the North Market District and the concerns about walking distance to the bus stop, safety, and lighting as well. And it's important to know that we did put back in 2 morning trips that would serve the majority of these trips as well. Route 2, we've gotten a lot of comments on that. Again, the main concern here is reducing service to peak hour only and not having service in the midday. 62% of the riders on Route 2 are served on 11 peak hour trips, and those trips are not proposed for elimination. So it's important to remember that we're looking at these routes in detail, we're looking at time of day, and we're making the best determination about where we get the most productivity. And I also like to point out that we've added an extra trip back on Route 2 at the 6:02 time period.
One quick question. You didn't say how many.
We're not doing questions.
I know.
Go ahead, Jess.
All right, Mr.
I can try to answer.
It was just 34. You didn't show their boardings.
34.
You had it for all the other ones.
James, what is, you know, top of your head, 34? I believe it was like 200 or 300 a day, somewhere in that general vicinity. All right, thank you.
My board members, we will have an opportunity to ask all the
When
questions.
we come back to 34 on that,
Okay,
we can.
we'll cover it. Okay. So real quick, existing network overview. We're talking about 70 routes in our existing network. We believe the system is confusing and disorderly, and I think that's easy to see by all the squiggly lines all over the map. Our service has a lot of hourly service, and we believe that a lot of our existing service is duplicative, and that it's also important to remember that when we opened the CRC extension here in the south part of our service area, we never went back and revisited the bus routes. We never changed those routes, even with the opening of the light rail line. So I want to talk a little bit about the ridership on routes and how the system performs today. I think this is important, and it's key to the project. What you see in front of you is a bar graph that shows in yellow, these are the top 10 routes that have the highest ridership by daily boarding. So you can see you have the 51 with over 3,000 boardings a day. The blue on the map on the chart represents those routes that have the lowest boarding, so the 10 routes with the lowest boardings. And you can see they range anywhere from around 300 down to about 142. And it's important to keep this in mind as we go through and talk about these routes, to remember that we really have proposed almost no changes to these routes that perform very well. We have added actually some frequency and more service to these routes. And these routes make up 48% of our daily boardings. So 10 routes in our system make up 48% of our daily boardings. The 10 routes here that we show that have the lowest ridership, they make up about 6.75% of our daily boardings. And these routes here, there's no question that we have recommended changes to most of these routes, if not all. And several of these routes we're proposing for peak hour and not total elimination. Route productivity is another important way that we measure routes and how routes perform. This is a scatter plot that basically gives you an idea how each route performs. So the x-axis represents frequency. Bus comes every 15 minutes, bus comes every 30 minutes, 45, and 60. We have different standards for different types of routes. So for fixed route service, our standard is basically 20 passengers per hour. So what this shows you is how these routes group and how they function. And so we're looking at our high productivity routes, 51, 30, the 1, and then we move to the next sector of routes, those routes that perform marginally well with 30-minute service, and then to the far left of the axis there are all the routes that have about 60-minute headways. So it's important just to kind of set that stage and let you see how our current routes and our current system performs. This map shows, it's a heat map of our existing system, and the darker the color, which are basically the reds, represents where we see the most boardings on our system. So this is by bus, so you can easily see where we do very well. You can see the 51 here and the 81 and other routes that do very well, and then others where usage is really not that great. So the existing network, so right now we cover about 930,000 and 20% of our service is geared towards frequency. So a quick route comparison. This is Route 51. This is our best route, and there's a few things to look at here. We talk about, routes got the things they need to have to be successful: density, linearity, connectivity. So there's a lot of things that go into making Route 51 successful. And then by comparison, we look at a totally different route, Route 65. This route is very lengthy, but it goes through areas that are not nearly as dense, and there might not even be the right type of infrastructure, such as sidewalks and things in place to support ridership on this route. But there are places in this route that do quite well. So as planners, we recognize where it doesn't do well and where it does well, and we try to make sure that we take care of those areas that are actually using the service that we're providing. Good route design takes into account many things: linearity, walkability, density, and these are all important as we talk about designing our new bus network. And it's important that, we can't replicate 51s over our entire service area, but we should be keeping in mind that we should be doing our best job to develop routes that perform well, that attract riders, and that function well. So currently we are at about 27% frequent in our network, and what we're proposing is that we move very slightly over towards a more frequent network. Sure, you remember early on we were talking about frequency and coverage and, Jarrett Walker and way over here on frequency. We believe what we're proposing is a really good medium in between moving all the way to frequency and then keeping coverage as well. Our new system we're proposing 27 all-day weekday routes, 26 Saturday routes, 26 Sunday routes, 10 peak-only routes, and 6 frequent corridors that would have 15-minute or better service. The frequency breakdown is important. This is the big part of our project. We're looking at creating better frequency. So you can see we're improving frequency on the weekday. 20 to 30-minute frequency of our routes improves from 46% to 74%. 60-minute headways, we drop that from 44% down to 3.7%. Frequency breakdown. This is on weekends. So again, if you look at our frequencies, what the biggest changes here is what happens on the weekend. We are introducing 45-minute routes. So this is something new that we're introducing, but it goes towards our goal of trying to reduce those 60-minute waits for people waiting on the bus. And here, Saturdays and Sundays, you can see we've made a huge reduction in hourly service on Saturdays, and still a very significant reduction on Sundays. So in terms of total vehicle hours, you can see we took some service from all-day weekday, and we tried to put some towards weekend and evening service. So it's a very small reduction, but you can see it makes a huge change, a huge increase for weekend service. The average headways in our system, this is important. So weekdays, we have basically 42 minutes is the average headway in our system today. We are proposing the new network, the average headway goes down to 31 minutes. So that's a significant improvement. And also on Saturdays, we would love to get down to 30 minutes for all of them, but we're going in the right direction, and that's the big key about our project. So I want to show you a little bit about the new network. The maps here, the colors indicate frequencies. So red is 12 to 15 minutes, blue is 30, light blue is 45, and the greens are 60. And I think it's pretty easy to see that we have basically one green route. So we're moving in the right direction there. And our new network, we believe, focuses transit on major corridors where we believe that we can build ridership. And we have more direct service that's less circuitous through our service area. And this network has been designed to be able to scale up. So if we wanted to get more frequency and we had a better, more revenue to do that, we could easily do that. And we also believe that our new network very well complements the 15-minute frequent service on light rail on the weekends. The network coverage for the proposed network is, as you see here. Again, we moved more towards frequency, very small change, but it's a move in the right direction. And we wanted to show you the Smart Ride zones where we have existing Smart Ride. They show up in yellow, so you got the Citrus Heights and Antelope area here. You got South Sacramento here. And as a part of our project, we're highlighting one Smart Ride zone there. So how many persons are actually served by the network? This is a comparison of existing and proposed. So here we have weekday network existing proposed, and the biggest thing to look at here really are the colors. So you can see how the 60-minute service shrinks. You go from weekday existing to weekday proposed. And then really on Saturday and Sunday, you can see that green goes down quite dramatically, and you see a large increase in the blue. So we're trying to give our customers and our riders better service, more frequent service, and that's what this is showing. So what's the impact on ridership? After all of this work, one of the big questions we get is, what is this going to do to ridership? I'm pleased to report to you that we have internally done our own ridership projection, but we also worked with SACOG and their travel demand model to do a ridership projection on our network. So we're forecasting anywhere between 400,000 and up to 1 million additional boardings a year with this new network. Now, it's important to remember that there will be an early loss. So even though we anticipate that over a period of time, ridership would go up, we are going to, when we implement the new network, there will be some decline. But over the long run, we're going to do better, and we're going to get more riders. So that's why I say we need to build ridership over time. It's going to take at least a year before we can accurately measure how this has impacted ridership. We need to create, and we will, more reliable service and better on-time performance. And we will also work on campaigns that will promote the new network and encourage people to try transit, try the new network, and get people on our buses. Bus stops, bus hubs is another important part of our project. It's not the focus of our project, but it's important to remember that infrastructure has to be in place to support a robust transit network. Sidewalks, crosswalks, shelters, lighting, all those things are important. And we have been working and will continue to work with the city and the county, the city of Rancho Cordova and Citrus Heights on making sure that we have the improvements in place to continue a more robust network. And we will continue to do an analysis of bus stops and bus stop spacing. That wasn't the main focus of this project at this point, but as we move forward, that's another aspect of the project that will be worked on. We also have been very diligent about reaching out to schools and making sure that we're talking and communicating with schools. We invited all the school districts to participate in our stakeholder resources group. We have held face-to-face meetings with some school officials. We have communicated with them via email and phone call. And we really are having no negative impact on how the service we provide to schools. We cover really about 95% of all schools now on our existing network, and we're staying really about the same for the proposed network, and that's within a half mile of a bus route. And also the school trip service, we currently have 15 Series 200s, and those are the school trippers. And a part of our project, we were looking to add up to an additional 4. So remember, our service area is basically up here, and that's where we focused on. So I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but I just want to kind of flip through them just so you get an idea of the amount of data that we looked at and how our system that we're proposing overlays on really important demographic data. So what you see here is population density. This is job density in our service area. These are census block groups with high poverty. We have minority census block groups. These are the seniors. We heard a lot from senior citizens in making sure that we're taking care of senior citizens as much as possible. Car-free households, the disabled in our community. And the state of California also has environmental factors that planners and agencies look at when they're talking about new service or new plans. So this is state of California environmental screening. And this slide also is state of California data that shows low income and disadvantaged communities and how our network overlays on top of that. And then limited English proficiency. So the next couple of slides really are just area slides. It gives you a better picture of what we're proposing for each area. So this would be the south area. And we made a lot of changes down here. There's no question about that. And we spent a lot of time down in the pocket area, meeting with folks in the pocket and responding to emails and phone calls. And we're proposing to insert a new smart ride zone here in this area. And then here's CRC, which continue to be a major hub for us. But you can see the system, the network is clean. It's linear. You've got good cross routes, good north-south routes to downtown. Downtown, Land Park, Oak Park. Again, we did a lot of cleaning up in this area. We have good service spread throughout the area. So you see a lot of routes heading into Midtown and downtown, but you also have some good east-west routes as well. The north area. This area, we did some cleaning up as well, and we tried to add a little bit more service to Natomas. And what I don't show on the map is where the Jibe routes actually fit on this map, but there is the Jibe transit service that operates in the Natomas TMA. And we've continued to have really good service on Watt. We continue to serve the VA hospital in McClellan. So we have done, I think, a lot of positive things in the iterations that we've done with the project. The northeast area, this is up in Citrus Heights. Originally, we had proposed shifting some of these routes a little bit further west, but based on public comment and us going back and looking at it, refining it, we basically have put things back. Sunrise Mall, Arcadia is still an important transfer location for us. And then we also have the Lewis Orlando transfer station. And we've added more service in the North Highlands area as well. The east area, this really is mostly focuses on Rancho Cordova, but we have really good service here on the 72, the 75, and we have provided good fixed route transit along Folsom Boulevard here, where we connect to Butterfield, Mather Mills, we connect to the library there. We're still serving the VA hospital here, numerous apartment complexes, and we've increased frequency on just about all these routes that you see here as well. So I'm not going to go into all these. These are all the routes, but I wanted you to see them. So we'll just kind of scroll through real quick. Route 5, Route 11, Route 13, Route 15, 19, 21, 23, 25, 26. I think you get the picture, right? But it's important to remember that these routes are the routes that are in our new proposed system, and we have added service to all of these routes. So more frequency and longer spans of service. So it's quite a few routes, actually. We still do very well, and we have a very large service area. So we'll just... So there are routes that we're proposing to discontinue service on. So I did want to skip over these. I want it to be very clear that, you know, there are routes that we have combined with other routes. Smart Ride can serve some of the areas where service might be eliminated. But I want to just highlight them. Route 22, we are combining most of Route 22 with Route 13. Route 24, all of Route 24 area now is covered by Smart Ride. Route 28, we believe patrons and riders could use and access Route 21 and Route 75, and both of those have better frequency and better spans of service. Route 47, the area would be covered by Routes 56, 67, and 81. Route 54, the area is covered by Routes 56, 67, and 81 and Smart Ride. Route 55, we would cover by an extension of the Route 68. Route 65, we would cover this or combine it with parts of Route 61 and 67. Route 74, we would combine with Route 75 and cover the east end, and the east end would be covered by the existing Cordovan today. And then Route 80, we would combine service with Routes 26 and 84. And then Route 95, we have joined or combined with Route 93. Smart Ride. This is not the main focus of our project, but it's important for you to see the Smart Ride zones and how they begin to fit into our overall network. So you can see we have service in Arden Arcade, Carmichael, Rancho Cordova, out here in the Power Inn area, and also down here in Gerber, downtown, and other areas. So there's the Gerber zone. And the downtown zone, we've recommended extending very slightly to cover the River Oaks neighborhood. We have a lot of elderly people there and low-income folks as well. And they will have some service, but we think it's important to capture them at least with Smart Ride. And then the Power Inn Smart Ride zone. So I know it's a lot, and I know I've gone through a lot, but I think there's some really important key takeaways for our project. One is that we're trying to create a more consistent 7-day-a-week network. 2, this network complements the investment we've made in the 15-minute frequency on light rail on the weekends. 3, we see a major reduction in the number of hourly routes in our system. 4, we're offering better weekend service. 5, we're going to be putting out new and improved schedules that would go along with this project. 6, we want to create a more reliable, dependable transit service. So that's another key takeaway. 7, we believe that it's equitable. And our Title VI analysis showed that we had no disparate impacts on low income and minorities and other citizens within our area. And it's a network to build upon. So next steps after we're done, and this is last slide, I promise. So upon board adoption, staff would then move to begin to work on executing the implementation plan that we have been working on. We would also begin a major marketing campaign. We would work closely with marketing. We want to make sure that we're reaching our middle schools and our high schools, and we're training up the next generation to ride transit. We will also be monitoring the system monthly. So we will produce monthly reports on how the system is functioning and operating, and we will begin to identify where there are major issues or problems we could fix. And we will also be doing quarterly service changes. So in a project this big, you're not going to do everything perfectly right the first time. There are going to be tweaks and there are going to be improvements that we can make as we move through the year. And like I said, we'll continue to look at our bus stops and bus stop analysis, and we would also update our short-range transit plan as well. So with that, I will open it up for questions. Hope it wasn't too long, but it's a lot of information.
No, you did fabulous. Mr. Cerna.
James and I will answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for a thorough presentation. I saw 85 slides and just about had a coordinator there. So,
I should have said at the outset that I'm not going to talk about every single one of
them. So as to your last point, which I think is a very, if not the most important point, which is how are we going to stay nimble? And these are going to be significant changes for the system with a lot of forethought, a lot of planning, a lot of analysis, a lot of outreach. But as you just mentioned, nothing's ever perfect out of the gate. Mm-hmm. So how are we going to be nimble? And how are we going to adjust quickly if necessary? What kind of dashboard is going to be set up with metrics to measure whether or not our predictions come to fruition in terms of enhanced ridership, whether they be shifts in frequency, headways, whatever. Mm-hmm. What's our plan moving forward to adjust as we go along?
Great question. So we have a lot of data collection that comes from the APCs on the buses, and we have technology where we can track every day the ridership, so we know ridership by day when it comes in. And I know James and I and operations and scheduling will be very diligent about watching the network and the system and how it's performing. So we will make sure that we are capturing, like I said, those boardings daily and what's going on. And I know that our customer service folks will probably be getting a lot of phone calls. And so we will have to work very closely with our customer service folks. And if there are major issues that are arising, something just is not working, we would do our best to fix it. So I can assure you that we will be monitoring it every day. It'll be every day, but we will report back to you on a monthly basis. Mm-hmm. And then we'll do the quarterly service changes where we've identified those things that aren't working very well and we need to fix them.
So, James, answer to Director Cerna's question. There are a couple metrics we're going to monitor, at least reliability, on-time performance, ridership, and customer satisfaction, those type of stuff.
So, and I appreciate the fact it sounds like there's been some thought given to how to stay on top of things and adjust if necessary. But with all due respect to our very capable staff that are going to be monitoring all this in real time, it's each of us up here that get the angry phone calls or the emails, right, or the tweets, what have you. I think there should be something that is consistent to a person on the dais about how the staff will respond on behalf of us, so that we're not just being perceived as passing something off and letting a concerned rider disappear into some black box. I'm hopeful that you've given as much thought to how that process will work smoothly, so that concerns are addressed in a very timely fashion. They're substantive responses, and they're not just lip service. Of course, that doesn't mean that every rider is going to be met with the answer and the response that they desire, but at the very least, they deserve to know that they've been heard. They've been heard in as quickly as possible and given a response as quickly as possible.
Okay, sure.
You're right.
Thank you.
Director Natoli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly want to compliment our staff for tremendous amount of work over the past year or better, probably going 16 months. And thank you for providing us all the comments. Very voluminous, and obviously we'll hear some more this evening. A couple of questions just to follow on. Related to the Gerber Smart Ride, Gerber Zone there, what sort of frequency are you proposing for that? It's a smart ride, but what sort of availability as it relates to buses for that area? For the Gerber's Smart
Yes,
Ride
for the
Zone?
Gerber
Zone, yes, yeah.
So the Smart Ride would be basically the Monday through Friday operations that we have now. We are talking with our operations folks and customer service folks about maybe doing Saturday service on those zones as well. So it's a possibility that through some future discussions and figuring it out, that Saturday service could be added as well.
Okay. And just related to the item we talked about earlier this evening, is there any E-Tram bus that runs along Calvine to connect to CRC? And if so, on that east side of 99, certainly for Elk Grove service area, but for the area, say, coming from Bradshaw west, or you can even come from Elk Grove, Florin west, are there some opportunities to, in working with, obviously they have their own service provision within the city, but everything on that south side of Calvine, until you get right to the freeway there, is in the city of Elk Grove. Is there any opportunity to, in coordination with what you're proposing here, to improve service for a broader ridership?
So part of what we would do is, once we have a network that we're going to move forward with, then we would reach out to our partners, like Elk Grove, obviously, and we would meet with them and talk about the new network with them and look at ways, because there's so much movement between both, that, it's important that going forward, we make sure that we're providing the best transit service we can through that corridor. So we would reach out with them and coordinate with them directly on specifics. They were involved in the project, from the get-go. But as we move forward in implementation, where we're sure about what we're going to do, then we can really get into the details of coordinating better with them.
Okay. In that same general area, we had actually a student from Florin High School, and the principal wrote in on Route 5, which is proposed to be eliminated, but you're going to keep, I guess, 105, run some peak hour service. But it was also pointed out that, I think we were looking at a school year. Have you extended that service will run throughout the year because of summer school? And they said, obviously, parent engagement, student engagement during the summertime. Did you accommodate that? I wasn't clear from...
Yeah, it would run year-round.
Year-round.
It'll be year-round. Okay.
Yeah, and it would be complemented, of course, by the Smart Ride as well.
I'm sorry, Jim?
It would be complemented by the Smart Ride as well.
Smart Ride, in that same area, right. Okay. And one other question then relates to the 80 and 84. I know I had some commentary from folks, and if I'm looking at page 22 in our packet on the new network routes, it shows this dotted line on that La Riviera, Folsom to, I don't know if that's Watt Avenue or...
That's the Watt Man Love light rail station, I believe.
Okay, so
I'm not sure which one you're looking at.
Yeah, it is the Watt Manley. But so what's that dotted line?
So the dotted line is what we're proposing on the Route 84 is to keep service on La Riviera Monday through Friday, because we have a really good ridership there Monday through Friday for folks commuting to work. And then on the weekends, we would keep the route on Watt Avenue. So that's what that dotted line represents. It's the connection of the route going straight down Watt and connecting directly to Watt Man Love.
So you have no weekend service on La Riviera. That whole neighborhood between Watt Avenue all the way over to, Mayhew, I guess runs all the way to Tiber. So there would be no neighborhood service there. What would be the closest building?
So you're right.
Light rail, yeah, but you got to get there.
They'd have to walk.
Rogue River Drive. That's a good jaunt.
It's a long walk, but we looked at the ridership by time of day, on that particular stretch of the 84, and we saw that we had really strong ridership on weekday.
Right.
And, you know, just it's the tough decisions of the project. And, you know, light rail is available. I recognize that it is a walk. I mean, it's not a short walk. It's, you know, it's more than a half a mile.
Easily.
So patrons would have to walk either down to light rail or they'd have to walk up to Watt to get to the service on the weekends.
So where would you catch it on Watt? If you're coming straight down Watt, you got American River Drive and you've got La Riviera. You got that interesting, rotation there. So where do you catch a bus stop? If you don't come off of Watt, you don't catch it up on the bridge.
So there are stops up on the bridge.
Actually, on the bridge?
On the ramps, like right at the edges of the ramps, there are stops.
And you're going to maintain those?
And we can maintain those.
You can or you are?
We do.
Under this proposal?
On the weekend. And we would maintain the stops yes.
On the weekend. Just one other question regarding that. So have we looked at, I don't know what's the closest neighborhood ride or smart ride in that area, but that's a pretty established population that's had bus service for ages out there. I bet you could go back in your annuals and look at 30 years of established service there.
Mm-hmm.
Not unlike other neighborhoods. Again, but I'm speaking to this one in particular. So,
at least since the late 60s.
I guess I'm just curious. Is there any smart ride proposed in that general?
We haven't proposed any smart ride for that particular area.
Okay. All right, I'll hold my questions for right now. Thanks. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you. Vice Chair Hansen.
Thank you. I'll have one question just because I got in trouble last time.
Now is the appropriate time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to go back to clarify this downtown East Sac Smart Ride map.
Okay.
That neighborhood that you call out there, for some reason on our planning documents we've called River Oaks. There is no such place other than the River Oaks community in Natomas. That is Marina Vista and Alder Grove. And if we're going to include it, we should include both public housing sites there in the service area. Right now you've only appeared to grab the Marina Vista site because that is a very important neighborhood that continues to need more service. For instance, if people there want to go to the medical center on Stockton, UC Davis, thank you for renaming the light rail station, they have to take 2 buses and it can take upwards of 2 hours to get there. So that leads me to just the last piece, and you don't have to answer it now, but for this downtown zone, I've noticed that you've cut out the hospital in particular from that, the UC Davis Medical Center. So I'm not sure if that was intentional and Sac State clearly is outside of it for probably a variety of reasons, but that's just something I'd like to think about with you.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Budge.
So I agree with everybody. I know we all appreciate the work and the difficulty of pulling this all together. And I appreciate the fact that obviously you need to be sure to talk to all the people who currently ride the bus. But this whole study, the whole outreach, you know, the pages show so clearly that you did outreach to all the people who currently ride the bus, but not to other people. And so one of the letters that I found most powerful was the communications from the parents in San Juan Unified, who provided incredible statistics about the transit dependency of so the huge numbers of kids who go to the schools there, elementary to high school. And obviously you're not going to let your elementary students ride the bus, although I know that in Sac City Unified, when we lived on the border between Folsom Cordova and Sac City, there were elementary kids out on Folsom Boulevard taking the public transit to school. But the comment of it's serving the schools, but then also focusing on the high schools and the junior high schools. So, like Don, I read the letter from the people on Route 5 at Florin High, and then Route 19 at Rio Linda High, and I'm not sure. I can see I don't actually know where Rio Linda High is, but you can see
It's
where the
still
route
on the
is.
proposed Route
You
19.
can see where the route is, but it doesn't necessarily say you're going by Reland High School.
Right.
You know, and I'm sure we all have high schools that are not being served by the network that's being proposed. The scatter chart is really illustrative. You're absolutely right. But it illustrates that the places, the routes where they have 15-minute service are ridden, and the routes that have 30 and 60-minute service don't get ridden. You know, if it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Don't you think if you had more frequency, then you might be able to pick up more people? I do appreciate the fact that you, in the redesigned 75, you kept service to the VA hospital at Mather, and that on Route 26 you continue to serve the VA clinic at McClellan. That's a good thing. In your slide 44, I'm not sure how you came to the conclusions that either the job centers or the seniors or the transit dependent are being served. I didn't follow that when you consider that bus 21 just goes down Coloma, and on both sides, at some distance, you have a senior population and you have a transit dependent population, and they can't necessarily walk all the way to Coloma. My biggest question is why are we abandoning the philosophy of the relationship between buses and light rail? When you do not serve a station hub like Sunrise that is on a major highway, that's actually Highway 2, believe it or not, you've got over 100,000 vehicles per day, north and southbound, and when you focus on Mather Field Road, that's fine, but it's over there. Whereas, the whole reason when we talked about upgrading the stations because of the GUNC opening, then we talked about upgrading Sunrise and making sure that it was a safe, secure hub for so many people to get to. And yet there's not service to the Sunrise station. And I will guarantee you that Rick Hodgkins joins me. He couldn't be here tonight. I got an email from him who said, please tell everybody. He wants bus 91. I'm not sure which one that is. But we need service to the Sunrise station. And there needs to be service down Folsom Boulevard between Sunrise and Mather Field Road. And there isn't. It's a very long way. It goes by a complex for people with mobility and sight challenges. Kinney High, the kids from Kinney High walk along there all the time with the Safe Routes to School project. There's apartment complexes. There's most of our commercial hubs, such as it is, and yet there's no bus in there. And I just continue to question why such major thoroughfares and major stations have been omitted in the planning.
I understand it's frustrating to not have, the Route 28, proposed elimination and then connecting to Sunrise Station. But, we did look at the boardings at that station on the Route 28, and they were very, very small. I mean, and it's not to say that in the future, as we continue to, make changes to the network and improve the network, that we could come up with something better where we could bring service back to Sunrise Station. So I understand that it's tough, and
you've got the whole station is designed around this enormous bus turnout.
right, and we do very well there with Park and Ride. I mean, a lot of people drive there and park there and use that, but the service that we currently had
Because
there.
there's no bus for them to take.
Well, the 75.
For
Connected to Sunrise.
every hour.
But you're right. Yeah.
Nobody ever, I've heard from 3 people who ride the bus 74, and that's the only 3 people I've ever seen on that bus. I mean, it's really awful, but if it only comes every hour, then
It's
only
tough.
comes
I
every
mean,
hour?
you're right. It's tough.
Okay, anybody else? All right, let me say before I start calling the cards, as I said, we're going to limit it to 2 minutes per because that even gets us to about an hour of comments. I will say that I have been to quite a few of the community presentations that they now affectionately are known in the community as the Jameses have done, and let me say that every single time there were tweaks made, there were changes made, there was, I'm very proud to say that our staff listened to the community and really did as much as they could to accommodate. So I want to thank you both for that.
Thank you.
All right. Barbara Stanton.
I have some already.
That's easy.
Good evening, Chair Kennedy and directors. We commend RT staff for bringing this out. And while we like frequent service, we are concerned that the implementation of SAC RT Forward will leave behind a lot of riders. We still maintain that as a public utility, SAC RT should provide service to all with no one left behind or create areas void of service. We are concerned that SAC RT is going to rely on smart RT ride services that are in areas created by the voids that are created. Currently, there are only 2 service areas, Citrus Heights and Franklin South Sacramento in place. They provide limited service hours and no weekend service. And there are 8 other service areas that are supposed to be created. So we'd like to know if those areas are going to be created prior or when the this new network is rolled out. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick Bryant.
Okay, I'm going to talk about Route 80. I take Route 80 from Willarga and from Greenback and Auburn going to Wat El Camino, and we need the services for the 80. And I recommend you guys to keep that route for us because we need those services to go to Greenback and Auburn and catch 93. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick. Can I see a show of hands of anybody who is challenged by having to get out of here because of transportation needs, time-wise? Okay. I'm going to... Arthur?
Mine will be quick. My name is Arthur Kitterling. I was wanting to ask about 23 and 25. I was wanting, I didn't catch it from what James said earlier, but I would like to mention that, ask if you're going to keep 23 at Sunrise, and if you're, because I read like where there was going to be going to ARC, and I was also wondering about 25, if they're going to, if not to 25, if there's a bus that's going to be going like where Manzanita and Winding Way is, where the 25 goes at present. and because I have meetings along in that area, and I was wanting to find that out, especially with 25.
I can answer that brief. The answer is yes and yes. The 23 is going to continue to go to Sunrise Mall like it does today, and the 25 is proposed to continue to run on Manzanita like it does today.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Helen O'Connell, can we get Helen a microphone, please?
Good evening, Board. I've been to several of the outreach that they've done, and I think that they've done an outstanding job in trying to reach everyone that is on the bus. And I'm glad that they've taken their time to fill the niche that they have done due diligence in making this new route system viable, and I support them in getting the new system up and running. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Trudy Ross, we'll get you a microphone.
Hello, this is Trudy Ross, and I take the number 2 bus, and I'm over there by Small Pocket, kind of east of the freeway from it, and it sounds like you're taking the bus away during the day, maybe really early in the morning. If I went somewhere to the hospital or something for appointments, which I do a lot, and I'd have to stay somewhere until the bus came at 4 or 5, whatever it is, and I'd be gone all day. I do ride paratransit. That means I would be a non-ADA, and they're already cutting a lot of my hours out from the non-ADA, from paratransit, and coming up with the extra money for paratransit instead of riding RT, which a day pass is a lot cheaper. And I go to the store in Rush River, so I can't walk to Southland Park Community Center, I think it is, for the 61, or even to catch a 6. That's way too far for me to walk because of disabilities and stuff. And I really would hope that there's some way that I could still have a bus instead of being left at home. When he said he swept, well, he swept me off buses. So I'm really hoping that something will happen.
Thank you, Trudy. Leslie Tom?
Okay, hi. Myself and my husband, who couldn't be here tonight, Jeff Tom, we're happy that we have the 62 going south of Florin Road again. But also, I wanted to know about service. Is it proposed to have service on Sunday or holidays or not? And then the other questions are, well, about the 2 and the 6 as well. Is there anything that can be, I know that they tried to incorporate the 11, and as far as the 61, as James told us just a little while ago, that they would take over some of the routes, but like Trudy's area, if I want to go visit or she comes to me, there's just no chance of working with that without having the 2 or the 6. But also, my other comment is on Smart Ride. I was told that it went from, in the south area, from Franklin to I-5, which I've talked to several people that have told me that it does not, because it only goes to Freeport, which means that does not include the couple of, few blocks neighborhood between Freeport and I-5. And I wanted to understand what's that about.
All right, thank you, Leslie. James, 30 seconds.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I can respond briefly to the question about Route 62. The answer is yes, there will be Sunday service on the 62. Thank you, Leslie.
Bonnie Lindeman. And followed by Tracy Shaw and Dan Allison.
Thank you for listening. You all received my little handout here, and a lot of what I have at the beginning of this flyer is all related to specific people that I felt would be better served on a bus than in microtransit. Low-income people without smartphones are at a disadvantage. Elderly trying to maintain anonymity don't want to necessarily be calling and having a smart ride come to their house. Those using ramps and lifts are being very well served on the buses. Those individuals that are relying on these schedules for safety get confused, and so I'm concerned about their safety. Medically fragile riders asked to hang out, or they can't be picked up from a business address. They can't necessarily stand in the shade nor shelters or formal stops. There's a lot of parameters as to that smart ride system. And in terms of walking, I do okay, and I'm fortunate, but 2 blocks of walking is equal to 10 minutes of driving. So try to visualize it from our standpoint. I'm concerned about microtransit riders being exposed to more in terms of airborne illnesses in such a close proximity. The routes. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. You still have more time. You have 15 more seconds.
Oh, good. Okay, I'll take it. Okay, I'll take it.
It's the red light that'll tell you.
This here is showing that our routes were very poorly timed, and which is the reason why, as a self-fulfilling prophecy, there wasn't any ridership. 28 does not match up with 23, 25, or 95.
Now you're done. Thank you very much. Tracy?
Chair Kennedy and members of the board, I'm Tracy Shaw, Executive Director for Power and Alliance, a property and business improvement district. Is it tired? Okay, I'm loud.
You killed your microphone.
I probably did, didn't I?
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much for allowing us to speak. I'm Tracy Shaw, Executive Director for Power and Alliance, a property and business improvement district, as well as the TMA in the southeastern quadrant of the city of Sacramento. And we have a unique position is that we represent thousands of businesses as well as thousands of residents from a multitude of backgrounds as well as different levels within our socioeconomics. And so when the initial draft came out, we had several holes within our service, and we had a lot of trepidation around our service being cut. But I wanted to come today and just commend the Jameses and thank both of them because they worked so diligently with Laura Fickle and myself, as well as our constituents, to ensure that the routes that were going to be cut, we came up with different ways to look at providing service to our high school students, some of our residents that wouldn't have had the opportunity to take transit who desperately need it. It's not an option. It's their only option. So just wanted to say thank you. And while nothing is perfect, we do appreciate. I've never seen a public entity do as much outreach and be as truly concerned with those that will be affected as what I've seen on this. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tracy. And after Dan Allison will be Carol Nelson, and then Mike Barnbaum.
Good evening, board members. I'm Dan Allison, and I'm speaking for Sacramento Transit Advocates and Riders. We are pleased to see the new network plan. We participated in the entire engagement process, and we believe that the plan is a good balancing of coverage and frequency, and we believe that it represents pretty well the needs of the community. We do believe that will increase ridership and therefore reduce VMT and greenhouse gases. We like the focus on higher density areas and significant destinations, but we do recognize that there are equity implications about the changes in routes for moderate and low density areas that are also low income areas. We support the use of Smart Ride to fill the gaps. We're a little bit concerned that it may not be sustainable because of its higher ridership cost. And it may be necessary to bring back some fixed routes in places where microtransit does not work well. And we believe that microtransit should primarily serve to take people to and from fixed routes, bus and light rail, and should not be focused on point-to-point service. A significant investment will need to be made in education for using microtransit and also for riders who formerly did not need to transfer and now will. The airport is a critical destination, and we would really like to see a plan for how the airport's going to be served with higher frequency and longer service span, because it should be part of the network. We appreciate the revision of the routes 30 and 38 so that they do serve Sacramento Valley Station, because it's an incredibly important destination. And when funding becomes available for more service, we would like to see it focused on low-income areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan, and stay tuned for the airport information that will be coming very, very soon, I think.
Thank you.
Okay. Carol Nelson. Followed by Mike Barnbaum.
Hi, I'm Carol Nelson. I'm going to talk about the 13 and the 6 route. I would like to see the 6 route stay in the morning, have like a 6-something bus in order to make the 13 route when you only give us 2 routes to State Buildings on North Market. And also I'd like to see somehow you get people from North Market to National. How you gonna plan to do that when you want to cut the route? Because in between where you want to cut on the 13 is where all the people are. You need to keep it on North Market. And then give us service in the evenings so we can make it to the light rail, and then make it to the bus to the light rail and get our buses to go home and not have to walk so far in the dark and take 5 or 6 boats just to get home. And I'd like to see the 6 improve more too, because right now it's working pretty good when you get this 635. And you can make your 13 bus, but now what you're planning, you would miss both transportations. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Mike, and after Mike is Jeffrey Tartagia, and then Deborah Wells.
Thank you, Board President Kennedy, Vice Chair Hansen, honorable members. It is with my honor and pleasure that I, Mike Barnbaum, by way of motion to the board, to approve and adopt the SAC-RT Forward New Network, Weekend Light Rail Frequency Improvements, and associated Title VI Service Change Equity Analysis, do solemnly swear and affirm on this Monday, 25th day of February, 2019, that I will support, preserve, protect, and defend the complete redesign of the SAC-RT Forward Network, and that I bear true faith and allegiance to the SAC-RT Forward Network through a collaborative team effort, which will include but not be limited to from Tuesday, February 26th through Saturday, June 15th, education, communication, outreach, training, and yes, riding, that I take this obligation freely, without mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that through that same collaborative team effort, on Father's Day, Sunday, June 16th, 2019, I will well and faithfully implement, execute, and discharge the complete redesign of the bus and light rail network that the Sacramento Regional Transit District is about to enter into. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, Mike. I think we have a new president. Jeffrey. Okay. Yeah, and none of us are complaining.
Well, Board, I will say making a decision tonight is premature. What they have done is a great first step, but as I was reminded last weekend, when Disney on Ice was here for the weekend, that there was no customer service, so there were repeated problems all weekend long with buses. Also, I got to see on the 23 route the capital needs that need to happen, because if you're rerouting the 23, I understand you want to get to Howell Avenue, but you taking it through Arden Way is one of the most impacted intersections. So there's capital needs. You've already shown that it's going to cost you at least, I think, $2 million that are having to be adjusted to do this system. The next thing is scheduling. You have not brought in schedulers to see how with these transfers, this works. All of that's going to take time. You've got Broadway that's going to be majorly altered and changed. You've got Capitol Hotel that the County Board of Supervisors have just approved that's going to make a major bottleneck at L Street. You've already seen what happened when it did it on 8th Street when the other motel was changed and improvised. Also, you will have coming in June, you've got the County Board of Supervisors should have the draft report about the 2,000 plus bus stops, where standards and what they meet. You still have problems right now, Connect Card and other issues, signage on bus stops that are still missing. All of these things need to get corrected if you're going to advance this system.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Deborah Wells, followed by Robert Copeland.
I can do the relay.
We have you hold it for me? Hi, good evening, Board. This is my first time coming to speak before RT Board, and this is a real, I work with Carol and Dean and about 50 other people on a little bus called the 13 route. Glad to see we made that top 5. Obviously, there was some concern. I've been an RT rider myself for about 5 years. I work for the state of California at 1625 North Market, where right now the 13 stops right in front of our door. Awesome, right? Yes, we love it. Now with this proposed change, rerouting it is going to take it away from our doorstep, as well as probably about another 25 people that work on the opposite end of Northgate. And I understand you guys have done a wonderful job. Absolutely, RT needs some redesign, but to take this bus, to reroute the bus that you're proposing, a lot of people have even mentioned they may have to quit their jobs because there won't be transportation to that area. There's a charter school on Northgate. Parents utilize that for pickup and drop-off. We appreciate the proposed reroute for the state workers, but again, there are other workers that will be displaced by discontinuing this route as it currently is. We've come to depend on this route to get to and from our respective places of employment. We have suggested at least a peak run that would run in the AM and the PM. We appreciate, again, the 623, 723, or whatever time it's going to be changed to, but we also need to have that service back to light rail, as my coworker Carol indicated. If you could imagine, I mean, we've been told, oh, it's less than a mile, and that's fine. We know it gets hot in Sacramento in the summertime. Walk a mile at 95 degrees after you've worked 8 to 9 hours. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Robert.
Mr. Chair, over here.
Yes.
Could I ask a question of the speaker before she sits down? I have a question.
Over here.
Over here.
There we go.
Hi. Are you at Consumer Affairs? Correct. Okay. Just wanted to know exactly where on North Market you're at there. Thank you.
Albert.
Well, I think both James should go back to the drawing board because this plan is not workable. As Director Natoli said about people have to walk. How would you like to walk over half a mile with a walker? And Director Budge, I know Rick Hodgkins. He's a friend of mine. He would complain about this if his favorite bus route was got eliminated or changed. As far as some of these other issues, what happens if you don't make the requirement add ridership in year 2, 3, 4? What are you going to do with the bus system? Once you lose customers, it's very hard to get them back. Think about that before you plan any changes to a bus route. And there's some bus routes that I know are still existing, but no service over on Madison Avenue. They're already gone. As far as outreach, you did a very poor job. I mean, I don't know about some of the other sections, but I think you did a terrible job with this plan. I gave it about 10 to 15% chance of success. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Doug Dieslin, I believe. Was I close?
Yeah, very close.
Oh,
thank you very
you.
much. Good evening, Chair Kennedy and members of the board. I'm Doug Dearlum. I'm here representing the transportation team of SAC 350. And we are pleased by the proposal tonight by the Jameses. Thank you very much. We believe it represents a good balance between ridership and coverage goals. We are pleased that many of the needs raised by riders, although not all of them, and the broader community resulted in improvements, and that many serious impacts on the riders were mitigated. We believe that this long overdue redesign and optimization of local bus service puts our community on strong footing to move toward the mass transit system we need. We support adoption of the proposal with its system-wide improvements. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Dean Fairbanks, followed by Stephen Barassa.
Good evening, Chair Kennedy and directors. Thank you for the opportunity. My name's Dean Fairbanks. I work for the California Board of Registered Nursing, which is next door to the Department of Consumer Affairs on Market Boulevard. I'm here to represent over 50 commuters who utilize Route 13 every day, specifically along the North Market corridor. We represent state employees, which I broke that down is roughly 23%. But the majority of them are 77%, and those are the folks that work between Northgate and National Drive on the corridor. When I first heard about the changes, I made sure that our state folks were getting the email sent to you guys. The gyms did a good job at bringing us 2 routes back, or 2 stops back to Route 13. But it was just really apparent that these folks that work between Northgate and National had no clue. So I represented them. I had them sign and attest to their name, their place of employment. How many hours do they take to commute? And then what legs do they take to commute? So out of 53 of us, we come from 23 zip codes. We spend 118 hours a day on RT. So only 7 of the 53 use Route 13 specifically. The rest of us have multiple trips. I myself, it takes three hours to commute. I take 2 buses and a train. So the time commitment's very important. We suggest having North Market corridor service during peak times. We suggest 2 in the morning and 2 to get us back home. Walking 2 miles between the corridor without sidewalks is impossible. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Stephen, and after Stephen is Russell Rawlings.
Hello, Stephen Barassa. I'm with Ion Sacramento, representing Ion Sacramento. I'm a board member and the chair of the Transportation Committee. We are fully in support of this plan. Very impressed by the phenomenal efforts by the staff and Jarrett Walker and Associates and the outreach. I've gone to 2 or 3 of those. It was right, Jarrett Walker, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I got that right. I get them confused with Randy O'Toole. They're on opposite ends, but phenomenal. You know, this system is a sprawl network. It's the hardest system to design a high ridership system. It's the hardest. You know, people want to go everywhere to work. They live everywhere. You did a great job. And you know, built into this plan is updating and tweaking. You know, perfection is always a moving target. You're always going to be seeking that perfection. A lot of these route improvements are things that, you know, could be worked on over time and may be implemented right away. Also, the outcomes presented are truly phenomenal. The potential ridership gains, 400,000 to 1 million new riders. This is only going to be, I think, more income that can go back in to even expand the network further, I would imagine. So we urge the board to move forward with this, and we support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Russell.
Good evening, board chair and directors. My name is Russell Rawlings. I am a member of SAC-TRU, a board member of Organized Sacramento, and director of advocacy at Resources for Independent Living. And I would like to compliment staff's hard work, given the large nature of this process, the outreach. We were fortunate to have an on-site presentation and do appreciate that at Resources for Independent Living as well as at a SAC-TRU meeting. So I think a lot of the comments that I've already heard have been made. I would like to call out special attention to Director Cerna's comments on the importance of metrics and feedback as we move forward. I would also maybe go a little further and encourage RT to consider continuing outreach even after the implementation of the new network and allow people to talk about their ride, because that's really where you're going to get the buy-in on this. If you're talking about making a major change like this, you're building new identities and you're needing for people to really buy into the routes that they use. Additionally, I have used route number 13. It's been a very, very, very long time. It is the route that serves Fry's Electronics. I'm not sure how many employees are using the public transportation there. The entire environment over in that area I would consider to be pedestrian hostile, though. So maybe some work could be done to make that area more commuter friendly and bring it into the network more effectively. I appreciate everyone who has said that they rely on it for transportation to work, and I know that solutions can be found. Thanks.
Thank you, Russell.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I could, I'd like to ask Mr. Rollins a question, if I could. Russell, do you have any specific thoughts? Because I know you take with some, or you did take with some regularity, Route 68. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on the rerouting of that particular route?
There are, you know, I do use 67, 68, and 51 quite heavily. I personally, my use probably is not the best indicator of the rerouting. I can't really speak to that. I am concerned about the access for the parts of the neighborhood that will be impacted. I know that a number of community members over the years have said that Oak Park's access to bus routes have declined. So that is definitely a concern.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Gail Morgan, I believe, if I read it right. Nope. There it is.
Okay, the mic's back on. So I want to compliment James and James, especially James Drake, for taking a lot of time with me on the whole overview. I probably looked. I don't think I missed a single one of the routes and going over them, and seeing the impacts they're going to have. Overall, an excellent job. But like everybody, I found one spot that doesn't work, and so, in spite of the incredible improvements for where I live, one of the places I go, he's not going to go there anymore. So I told him I'd come complain, but I understand the process. I'm involved in public life a little bit elsewhere. But I sure would like to see that 19 go down Alberta Road. Really would. And if we could go down Alberta Road and then down to Elkhorn and back, I think that might be I don't know how much more that would cost. I don't know if he's looked at those numbers yet. I just said something tonight about maybe routing it that way. There's nobody to pick up, in my opinion, between Dry Creek on Elkhorn and Watt Avenue on Elkhorn. That's farmland and industrial. So if they could go up and catch those, I know not a lot of people, but it sure would help me. I'm going to have to buy a paratransit pass, or however they do that. It looks like individual rides will cost me over $100 a month for my trip up to Alberta. So that's my one complaint. Everything else looks fantastic. I appreciate the work they've done on that.
Great, thank you. Joyce Adams Watkins, followed by Zach Miller.
Good evening. I'm a transportation operator, and I'm speaking on Route 80, La Riviera, that area. My concern was my passengers, I let them know about the service being cut. And a lot of them, they use that service. Right there from going north on Watt, going to Arden, or going east, going all the way to Manlove. And there are seniors, there are students, and there are disabled people, and there are people, regular working people, college students, that catch that bus. And also, the main thing is, if you're going to cut the route, please give them something to ride in that area. And I understand you're going to use the 84, but now they're not going to have a weekend service. I drive that bus on weekends, on Saturdays, and Tuesday through Friday. And I pick up people every day that I go to work. And they use it on Saturdays. People go to church or go to the store, different activities. There are neighborhood apartments over there. I pick up families with children on Saturdays going to the store. Seniors that are disabled, they ride the bus. So I'm here for my people that I transport to and fro, and also the 65. I did that route one day for day off work. Oops.
You got time.
But my point about that, I let the people know that they were going to cut the service. So, and a lot of them didn't know the information. And my concern is how many people that are doing the work ride the buses? The people that make decisions, what do you do? Do you ride the transportation that you're cutting?
Right.
Thank you.
So thank you, Joyce. Joyce, I also want to thank you for being here. I'm over here. Thank you for being here to advocate on behalf of your riders. That's really phenomenal. Zach Miller. Followed by, I believe it's Mary Beth Barber.
Good evening. I'm here to support the plan, and in particular the changes to routes 30 and 38. It's a very innovative solution, doubling up those two on J and L streets. Big thanks to staff, Mr. Boyle and Mr. Drake, for being incredibly responsive, engaging with me and other Route 38 and 30 riders for a lot of time over the past few months. So that's really fantastic. I want to flag one potential issue, because we all want this plan to work, right? So J and L streets get a lot of congestion during the rush hour, as you know, and we're now adding more riders to J and L streets. So if this plan is going to work for those riders, it's imperative that we have the resources available if we need to add an extra bus or two to those lines during peak times. And also I want to encourage RT to coordinate with the city of Sacramento on those corridors. We already heard a mention of the convention center and so forth. Lastly, I'd love to see 1 million more RT riders, right? That would be fantastic. And this is a plan that I think comes from a perspective of investment, which is wonderful. So let's get the word out. How are you going to, let people know about these changes? I would encourage the board and staff and management to think about that as the plan rolls out, and in particular, where you increase service, where you've improved service dramatically such that maybe people who might not ride RT now would ride it. How are you going to let them know? Because a lot of people only find out because they ride the bus, right? So for instance, you have a lot of bus stops that are very visible. Considering, I'd recommend that you consider advertising some of these positive changes so people know about it outside of your current ridership. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted, since you mentioned L and J, the city is working on an intelligent transportation system upgrade throughout the downtown grid that will allow us to eventually, hopefully, prioritize transit, but essentially make those intersections work better that are congested at those hours. So hopefully that will help the bus throughput.
I'm really happy to hear that. Thank you.
James.
And real quick, I just want to add on that I have had meetings with the city traffic engineer, and we are very much familiar with what the city is planning on doing and improving traffic flow through those intersections and the importance it has on the bus system.
Thank you. Ms. Barber. Followed by Bruce Griesenbeck.
Hi, thank you, Chair. My name is Mary Beth Barber. I am the Parent Advisory Committee Chair for San Juan Unified. And just a quick overview, San Juan Unified is the second largest school district in Sacramento County, and the largest that is principally, they are RT buses there. We're actually bigger than Sac City and definitely bigger than Twin Rivers. Thank you. There's been, James and James have been great, and they have definitely listened to comments from myself. My vice chair from the committee is also here, but I think there's a missed opportunity with San Juan Unified. San Juan Unified is historically thought of, because it's in the county and principally without, say, a city representation or a city feel, so to speak, as a suburban district. But it's not. It has grown. It has changed. I sent you all some of the demographics of the district itself. And at least from the observation from a parent who's part of the local control accountability plan, I don't think San Juan really realized how much they needed RT. I would strongly encourage regional transit to, you're basically starting from a true clean slate when it comes to the area, the footprint of San Juan Unified, and to take a look at some ideas for 200 routes. Those are the school routes, in order to help out, because there's less than 1,500 kids in San Juan that are bused right now, and all of those are students who have very, very high needs. And we're talking about a district of somewhere between 45 and 50,000 kids.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just want to emphasize, to point out, we heard you and we discussed, potential additional services for the San Juan, Unified.
Mm-hmm.
And I think on slide 20-some, whatever, we said we add 4 school trippers or school, peak time service for specifically for your district. And we would like to work with you to say you find out the most most potential peak time routes for you guys. So we will work with you. So this plan already include 4 for you. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'll just follow up with that by saying that Mr. Lee has steadfastly maintained throughout this process that of the impacted riders, that our students would be a top priority in protecting their service. So
the problem is that there's not current ridership.
Right.
There's a disconnect. The county never thought of itself as or San Juan as a key area to even consider the bus.
You've been heard.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce.
Yeah, Bruce Griesenbeck here on behalf of Sacramento Area Council of Governments. Just speaking in support of the effort that you're going through. Understand there's a lot of harrowing choices that have to be made. If we had plenty of money to provide service to every last corner of every last part of this region, we wouldn't be here. And if we hadn't seen pretty significant ridership drops over the last dozen years or so, we wouldn't be here either. We do applaud the effort that RT staff has gone through. I'm also a huge fan of the Jameses, as well as Laura Ham and others who really did work very hard to initiate this project and stuck with it for 16 months. And the concept of providing more frequent service on a more concentrated network with longer hours is a good one, even though it does require some harrowing choices, and obviously you're in the middle of that. We applaud you and encourage you to stick with it and make the final tweaks and changes that you'll be needing to make to satisfy as many people as possible and get moving with it. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce. Charlotte Smith.
Thank you so much. I'm here representing the Southland Park Neighborhood Association and to register 2 points of contention with this new plan. And we did submit a letter, and we've also submitted emails from many of our residents. Yeah, more than a couple. So 2 points of opposition. One, to the Route 6. We do not want to see the Route 6 go to 2 a.m. routes and 2 evening routes. We do recognize that you did allow for an afternoon route that would pick up California middle school students, because otherwise they would have been stranded for over an hour until the next bus, which would have probably wreaked havoc on that neighborhood and probably not worked well for anyone. But so that still being said, you are still not servicing the Southland Hills Shopping Center, because the concept is then we would make the 62 would divert away from 13th Street, go up Southland Park, but it would turn on 43rd and still not service the Southland Hills Shopping Center. That's a problem because we're going to have an adult daycare facility open there momentarily, and they are actually put into their plan that they're going to rely on an hourly bus service to drop off and pick up clientele who are coming there for the day, to give, workers, people at home that are caring for their elderly parents or other people, a break. So we oppose the changes to Route 6. We also oppose the changes to Route 62 by diverting and going up Southland Park Drive and not going up 13th. You actually it's a misnomer. It says right here that you're still servicing Alice Burney K-8, and you're not. In fact, the closest place you could drop off students would be at the very back side of the school, which is not the school, it's actually a residential area. And I just want to make it clear that the whole reason why 43rd Avenue was approved for speed lumps is because we had cars driving in excess of 200 miles on 43rd Avenue. And now you're saying you want to release elementary school age students to walk to school from an unsafe route. This is not a smart decision and will cause havoc in the future. So we strongly oppose these 2 changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for speaking. That is the last card we have. Mr. Cerna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I know there's been, rightfully so, ample thanks to staff, especially the 2 Jameses, for exceptional outreach. I think you can certainly take a lot of pride in the fact that you're not just receiving those accolades from us, but from members of the public, and I think that's probably the closest true testament to a job well done that you're going to ever receive. So I too want to add to that and thank you for a job well done. I don't know that tonight I'm prepared to support this. Doesn't mean if it's the will of the board to come back with some refinements, that I wouldn't be willing to do so with those refinements, but I wanted to make some suggestions. 3 points I want to make. First is a question. We heard from at least 2 members of the public this evening that are sight impaired. And it occurs to me that when you have something like this where we're changing substantially, in many cases, routes, the geography of our network, and you have people that are sight impaired that rely on our system on a daily, if not hourly basis, to be mobile in our community. What do we do? What do we do in terms of reaching out to Society for the Blind? Do we, for instance, do we offer additional services to help sight impaired riders relearn new routes so that they understand how to navigate by cane or by animal assistance, pedestrian access to and from their origins and their bus stops? So that's the first question: is what do we do specifically for sight impaired riders? And then let me get through all my comments and questions, and then I'd like to hear the responses. And then I think it's pretty clear to me that the Route 13 issues need some reconsideration. I'm the only one on this board that represents the folks that took time out of their evenings that work for the state, presumably all for the Department of Consumer Affairs. And I take to heart their concerns, and I understand that this is a tough exercise for everyone. We have to be willing to understand sometimes there's going to be some temporary pain for the greater good of the system to make the system better for everyone. But at the same time, there's so few routes in the Thomas area that when we begin to consider changing one that has a lot of history of servicing employees for one of our larger employment centers out there, and I'm hearing that some folks are even considering finding new jobs, that resonates with me. So again, if it's the will of the board to send this back to staff for some refinement tonight, that's one of the areas that I would like you to focus on. And then lastly, I guess it's a question and a comment. I know Henry is very familiar with my concerted focus on the South Oak Park Fruit Ridge Pocket neighborhood. And this is that part of my supervisorial district, the southerly part of it, that where I represent, where I'm both their city council member and their supervisor. That's where the 6,500 folks living there count on their county supervisor for all services, whether they be municipal or countywide. It's also a community that lost an elementary school not too long ago, Fruit Ridge Elementary. Now that has since kind of resurrected itself into a very resourceful center, the Fruit Ridge Community Collaborative. But the 68 currently runs north-south through that community from 14th Avenue south to Fruit Ridge, and actually has a relatively newly improved bus stop at my insistence in front of the collaborative. This is a collaborative that not only is home to a number of nonprofits doing tremendous work on a number of fronts in our community, but also we moved a Birth and Beyond, a county Birth and Beyond site recently to this location. I know for a fact that there are a number of patrons alone of just the Birth and Beyond site that use public transit to get there. So correct me if I'm wrong, but when I look at the rerouting map of 68, it looks like it actually kind of skirts the edge of the community now. It looks like it goes down to MLK and not 44th, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so that's a problem for me, because now you're going on the edge of the community, of that part of the community, and not down at center, and you completely avoid the Fruit Ridge Community Collaborative, where we just invested a year and a half, 2 years ago, a new bus shelter. So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So again, that would be another area where, again, if we're going to refine this further, I want to know if there are some alternatives, that if it's not going to go down the spine of 44th any longer, is there a way for it to come down 23rd, catch some kind of loop that hits Fruit Ridge Community Collaborative and then proceed south? There may be some other ways to do that. Or, for instance, I think I made the comment last time, maybe there's an opportunity for Smart Ride to extend itself to serve specifically the collaborative. I don't want it to be left unaddressed. This is a community that has lost way too much in recent years, and we're going in the other direction. Quite frankly, this community is enjoying a renaissance right now. It's got a lot of new energy, and commitment to self-improvement. They got the strong support of their supervisor. Last thing I'm going to do is vote for a change in the routes that fails to serve that area.
Okay, so I'll let you respond to that one, but let me cover the first two. So it's a good question about the blind community and how we outreach to them. We work closely with the MAC. We've gone to the MAC and we've given numerous presentations to the MAC, and we will continue to work closely with MAC and with our Accessible Services Division to make sure that those in the blind community know exactly what the route changes are and what we're proposing. We would provide a very detailed route by route description, turn by turn of every single route before we would actually implement it, so that we would get that information out to them as soon as we could. So as soon as we had an adoption or a go ahead with the network, we would begin to write up those very detailed concerns or the route descriptions for the blind community.
Can I?
Oh, sorry, Laura.
I just want to add to that. As far as what the Accessible Services Department does with supporting the various travel training programs in the community, we do support and provide passes for Society for the Blind, for Paratransit Inc., and for some other programs to support their travel training programs, and we will reach out to them directly with this information to provide that additional assistance. We also have Society for the Blind, the National Federation, and the California Council of the Blind represented on the Mobility Advisory Council, so our accessible services staff will work directly with their reps and make sure we get the word out.
I appreciate that, but I guess, you know, I want to have some comfort knowing for a fact that, James, you mentioned turn for turn in terms of the new bus routes, but I'm asking you to shut your eyes and put yourself in the place of someone that can't see. So if I currently live in an apartment, you know, on N Street downtown Sacramento, and now my whole world's changing temporarily because I need to figure out not just how the new bus line is going to travel, I got to figure out how I'm going to travel to get to the bus line. And that's going to change everything, where curb cuts are or not, where the raised dots are or not, whether or not there's a stop sign that I have, you know, when I cross a particular intersection. So all I'm saying is let's not reinvent the wheel here. Perhaps the Society for the Blind actually has some programs in place for this very, you know, situation, this circumstance. But if it doesn't, I'm suggesting that we work very closely with the Society for the Blind to actually provide some additional level of service that's requested. You know, it may be very limited and you may have a handful of folks, but I think it's incredibly important because I sure as heck, if I'm sight impaired, this is going to change everything for me, and I want some help figuring out what to do about it.
We will work directly with those programs, and in particular the program that Paratransit Inc. operates. They provide fixed route bus and light rail travel training. That's the focus of their program.
Okay.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Route 13. We understand that there's a concern there, and you know we want to do the best job we can to serve those commuters who use that bus and depend on that bus. So what we are going to do is go back and look again at Route 13 and look at adding some PM trips. So we will cover the AM trips and the PM trips. So I can assure you that we've heard the concerns and your concerns, and we will go back and look at that and look at adding some PM trips.
Okay.
And then I'll let James answer the
68 question. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I've pulled up the map here of kind of the Oak Park area, and the existing 68 just goes 14th Avenue down 44th Street.
Right.
And the simplest way to address your concern, Director Cerna, was it would be a very minor change just to keep it as is. I don't think that would have any cost impact. The ridership impact, I mean, we suggested it this way because we thought it was a superior design, but I wouldn't sit here and tell you that I think it's a major ridership impact either way.
Well,
we can go into the design more if you'd like.
Then let's make the executive decision right now. We're going to shift it to back where it is today. Keep it there, okay?
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Sorry, I got sidetracked. Director Natoli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. again, just to reiterate, a lot of good work here, but obviously that's why you have a board and a board meeting to hear from members of the public, both what they like and what maybe they think we could do better at our level, and recognizing we've given you a tremendous challenge. So I just wanted to echo the comments, some of the which I heard here, and actually, again, the volume of information you gave us, not areas that I certainly know as well as some in the areas that I immediately represent on the Board of Supervisors, but certainly on the Route 13, I heard you say you're going to add additional routes in the PM. I assume that's going to be address some of the concerns we've heard here, and there was some pretty good back and forth between the two Jameses and some folks out there who were strong advocates, but also very concerned, as we heard from a couple folks this evening, about walking to and from. So again, I don't, I guess maybe a little more specifics behind that before, if we're being asked to act this evening. If not, maybe to come back with some specifics on that. I want to just go back to the 8084, recognizing that you made tough choices all throughout the system. We heard from, I think, the only transit operator this evening who spoke to, on behalf of her riders, on the bus that she operates. Again, that's not the only testimony, and maybe we could hear from others as well, but that to me is pretty powerful on the weekends, and I'm familiar with those areas. I don't even only connects part of the areas south of Folsom Boulevard that I represent, but familiar, and I guess I'd like to have us take a look at that, at least some service on the weekends for those areas, and maybe the ridership numbers, again, you can pull those up. I want to just note, too, that on a comment that was made by Director Budge, because I recall was on the Sunrise Station, that was going to be a major hub station, and if we're underutilizing it, kind of what the long-term, recognizing you're going to continue to do outreach and look at it and so forth, but the whole idea is that folks coming from the east, from the south, from the north, and then along the Folsom line, recognize we have stations there. Some of those are close enough for folks to walk to, but there's still fairly sizable gaps along that whole Folsom corridor. And this isn't the first time that the 28 or 74 have been proposed to be modified or eliminated. At least 2 times since I've been on this board, that's been talked about. And this effort, obviously, which was much more intense and certainly the look. But I guess I'd like to hear a little more about what the long-term vision is from our staff as it relates to the Sunrise Station. When you look at what's happening, certainly in Rancho Cordova, but to the east in Folsom and communities to the north that we're serving with Smart Ride and so forth. And so I pose that kind of as a question, not necessarily that you're going to answer it all this evening. I would also note that in all of this that we're modifying and trying to have more frequent service, but we're really not reaching any newer areas in the county. And when I think about a growth area where we actually levy a fee on homeowners annually in the Vineyard area, it certainly wouldn't cover the cost of a bus, but there really is nothing in this plan or nothing that I see on the horizon to look at how we might actually build ridership in that area and get, at least get them to light rail stations and or some backbone and that's why I asked earlier about the Elk Grove service, because it skirts a portion of that area. But you've got an area that both Supervisor Kennedy and I represent that is adding hundreds of homes a year, and people are making choices about their, either how many cars they're going to own in their houses and how they're going to commute and how they're going to get, to and from their work and from other places. And so I guess I would say to us that as we look at that as one of the newer growth areas, that it's all been planned for some 20 years. Houses have come out of the ground, I say on an order of magnitude of several thousand. But how we might at least begin to touch that area with some service to begin to build ridership, because you're never going to get to those riders if in fact we don't have some service that connects to them. And so I point that out because that's an area that's a growth area in the county. It's not something that's new on the, in some planning stage. It's here and now, and will continue to be an area where I would hope that, again, working with county planners, with county transportation staff, and with some of the neighborhoods out there, that we look to find a way to maybe connect some of those neighborhoods, and get them at least to light rail stations, and maybe there are some plans for that, but recognizing some of the limitations you're working with here. So I would just note that. And lastly, again, not an area that I represent immediately, but I heard some comments this evening. I received some calls and actually read the material on the Route 2, and folks have been long-time users. I guess you added another peak hour later in the evening service. but some folks that expressed tremendous frustration. I'm sure Supervisor Kennedy and Councilmember Jennings and others heard that at the community meetings. But folks that have been long-time riders made choices about, what they ride and where they work. And I think you've gone a part of the way to address that. But I would say that I'm not so sure, at least from what I heard from a couple of folks personally, that this is necessarily going to address all those concerns. So I don't know if there's anything you want to respond to, James. I give you a lot of things, but I just, particularly on the 8480, that in particular is something that I think we need to take a further look at.
I can talk.
So the concerns about the 80 and the 84 are, I mean, we totally get that, and you're right. I mean, there's a community there on La Riviera. We recognize that. We know that. The county, on the other hand, has made very large capital investment on Watt Avenue with those bus lanes and signal priority for us to use to get our buses through there. So the thought is we didn't want to totally disregard that infrastructure that the county built and put in place. So we would run the buses on La Riviera in weekday to make sure that we're still providing service for folks who are trying to get to work and trying to get to school. And then we left it on Watt on the weekend so that we would still be kind of holding up our end to utilize the infrastructure that the county built for RT to use and to run buses through. So we were trying to balance. I mean, that's the whole point of this project is trying to balance all these different things. And I'm not disregarding.
I would just say I appreciate that, and the infrastructure is important, and I want to see it used too, but I'll take the people over the infrastructure every time.
I appreciate.
And I say that to our
direction.
county DOT folks too, James, just so you get you off the hook. So
I appreciate that direction. I mean, I think that helps us out tremendously on that.
Okay, thanks.
Director Budge.
Thank you. So I agree with all the comments of my seatmates. Areas that I don't necessarily know, the 13, the 6, the service to Rio Linda High, the service to Florin High, which I do know, the service on La Riviera, San Juan's perspective on whether or not their kids are actually being able to take the public transportation that they need to get to school. Rancho Cordova is in a difficult position because we, for probably 20 years, have not had a lot of service from regional transit. We've had service on Coloma Road. We've had service on Zinfandel. There's high school and junior high, and I have no clue how many churches on Coloma. And the duplexes, Church Row, duplexes, churches, and junior high on Zinfandel. And I completely agree with Don. I am concerned about Sunrise Station not being used. And the whole thing gets exacerbated when you consider Rancho Cordova's investment. As was pointed out earlier, we were the one of the 3 new cities that were required to join regional transit in our LAFCO agreements. And all of our TDA funds go to regional transit. But we also have a transit tax that was implemented when Stone Creek and when the Anatolia's Sunrise Douglas were first approved at the Board of Supervisors before we incorporated. And so those of us who live in those areas, as well as the business community that's been developed in that area where we have extended the transit tax, we all pay on an annual basis. So when the Cordovans began to run, we were getting, we've got 3 years of CMAQ funds, thank you SACOG, et cetera, and that was fine and dandy. But right now, those Cordovans are being funded by the transit tax that we all pay. And to begin with, if you look at the amount of TDA money that comes to regional transit, and you compare that to the city of Sacramento on a per capita basis, Rancho Cordova pays more per capita for transit service that we don't have than the city of Sacramento. And then when you add our investment that's buying those three Cordovan routes, we are truly paying out of pocket for the little bit of transit service that we're able to have. And so, you know, it's like Don said with the vineyard, we've got all these houses that have been constructed in the southeast area and are being constructed as we speak. And so, as you know, from talking to Albert and everybody, we're trying really hard. The very first time, what was called the Folsom Transportation Association, something or other, went to the Anatolia Clubhouse and had a public meeting about the East Area Rancho Cordova Folsom Transportation Plan. The number one question asked was, when do we get a bus to the Sunrise Station? And that question, that desire, has never been fulfilled. So I joined the guys and would be more comfortable if we did not approve this tonight, if we allowed you to go back and think about some of those things and rehash a couple of the routes that with the simple fixes like the 44th Street fix and that kind of thing, and then bring it back. I don't think it's going to solve our problem in Rancho Cordova, but hopefully it will solve some of the small problems that have been brought up here that could be an easy solution.
So I just want to hit real quick on the Sunrise Station because it's come up quite a few times now. And, you know, I understand that it's tough when you talk about, you know, removing service from somewhere where we've made investments. And I would just like to point out or remind the board that we have received a grant from Caltrans to look at BRT and BRT corridors and BRT service in our service area. So I can't promise you that there would be some type of BRT service directly to Sunrise Station, but that's one of those corridors that we would be looking at for the potential of.
Isn't BRT a 20-year-old technology?
No.
I mean,
there are communities investing in BRT across the country.
Right.
I mean, Jacksonville just launched a massive 4-corridor BRT.
Okay, so how do you run BRT up this is in the weeds, I'm sorry, but just think about how you would run BRT on Sunrise Boulevard between 11:30 and 6:30 almost every weekday when the entire 3 lanes are completely congested.
I understand that there's lots of congestions, but those are all things that we would have to take into consideration and we would look at.
You'd have to use the little 40-foot lane that was originally intended for light rail on the Sunrise Bridge.
I understand.
Vice Chair Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank Pat Hume for sitting through this entire route optimization program without any bus routes in Elk Grove.
Yeah, but he got $350,000.
Yeah. But you do have 3 votes thanks to that $350,000. So thank you, Pat. And Carrie, you too. I know this is somewhat academic for the two of you, but hopefully not into the future. I sort of jest a little bit, but James, you've done as phenomenal a job on a complex task like this as anybody could do. And I know it's not merely an academic task because it really does impact our riders. But to me, to have people like Ion Sacramento here in support, to have ECOS in support, to have SACOG in support, to have the Air District in support, to really have so much strong community support. I heard even from people who might quibble with the detail here or there that this is a very big improvement over the route system that was designed, 1984?
Several decades ago.
Okay, somewhere around
somewhere back then.
It's evolved, or one might say mutated over the years, but
well, and you know, the evolution of this system, I think, both causes dependence in some ways because obviously people get used to using it the way it was, but also it causes, I think, sometimes us to make up for growth patterns that aren't necessarily supportive of transit by trying to spread the network really thin. And there's no mistake that a lot of growth has happened in ways that don't take transit or pedestrians or walkability into consideration. And a lot of the things we're trying to achieve through our piecemealing, I think, are to work around really bad land planning. And as much as I hate to say it, you know, the state, and I feel bad for the employees out on Newmarket, but the state has continually moved their operations away from transit to new growth areas or to suburban areas that are completely car dependent. And that policy from the state is a real tragedy because it forces employees to have to drive. Our greenhouse gas emissions as a region are over 50% from the transportation sector because we've created these unlivable communities where we force workers into cars to have to commute long distances. And now what we're trying to do through Sacramento RT Forward is to really align our routes to our population, to our job centers, and it's not going to be perfect. And I don't want to be cliche, but we can't let the perfect become the enemy of the good. And here, I think this is a very good plan. This isn't even what Jarrett Walker told us to do. This is a significant modification from what the consultants told us to do, because every time this is before us, we erode it, and it's almost like death by 1,000 cuts. At some point, we're just going to give up and say, let's just have the old plan back, because we can't take the idea that we're going to change people's lives. And I have full confidence that people are going to adapt. I don't know about some people who are in places and work situations that make that very hard. But I do think what we've tried to do is through paratransit, grandparenting, as I call it, not grandfathering, that they will, and hopefully through this process, will give people a year to adapt through paratransit. That hopefully too through Smart Ride or Jibe and Natomas, some of the additional services, you know, route planning, trip planning is really an important new tool that's come. And so when people say, well, I'm not sure how I would get around, there's so many wonderful new tools that connect not only to bus, train, but ride share, bike share, scooter, all these other options that I think we're looking at a very narrow slice of mobility here. And I get that we all want to make it perfect for our jurisdiction and our city. But, you know, I could go in and take apart a big chunk of it for my part in Natomas or Central City things that would make people feel happy that I raised a comment and got it in there. But it would actually be bad from a trustee standpoint for the overall system. I believe if we really can see 400,000 to 1 million new riders, that is a validation of public transit in our region, which for over a decade we've seen that trust, that reliance slide to the point where many people don't have to interact with RT. They've already adapted around it. And we want to be relevant in their life again. I really do believe not only for the people who we serve day in, day out right now, but for all the other people that can't rely on us because we don't have frequent service, we don't have the right coverage. Our routes, which were designed when I was a baby, aren't germane to the world we live in today. And this plan helps change all of those things for the better. I don't believe that we can make the perfect plan. I don't believe that is our mission. I don't think it can be our goal. I think that we should continue to evaluate it, but I'm perfectly happy to make a motion to approve the plan tonight. If staff need discretion to make tweaks as they work through comments, I'm fine with that. But anything that erodes frequency, erodes the ability to really align routes, get rid of low ridership ones, or create better opportunities to connect a population that's unserved, I think that's all worthwhile, and I don't think we should undermine that because your work speaks for itself. It's really a big step forward.
Thank you. The chair will second that motion, and Director Howell has a...
I just wanted to add that I know that this has been a long time coming. And I think that all of the changes, even in the short time that I've been here, are improvements. I don't think this was ever intended to be the be-all and end-all, and I think tweaks will be required moving forward. And I think, given as responsive as you both and all of the RT staff appears to have been to all of the comments that came in with the many, many, many meetings and hundreds of emails and detailed responses in most cases to each and every one of those, I have no doubt that you will find ways to make what tweaks need to be made in the future so that people will not be as adversely impacted as they think they might be as we sit here tonight. So I support it.
Director Harris.
Chair.
Thank you, Chair. It's been a lengthy discussion. It's absolutely true that it would have been unrealistic to think about realigning the entire system without causing inconvenience to some riders and actually creating a situation that was a hardship for some riders. This was to be anticipated, but you know, when you think about trying to bring our routes into a condition where SAC-RT can move forward, literally, where the system can grow, I agree with Director Hansen that people will find a way to adapt. It will work, and there are more mobility options at this point. As far as tweaking, I fully anticipate that you're going to have plenty of that to do. I sent on some comments about a bus route that you know, you rearranged the time and it meant that a few people coming out of work were going to miss the bus by 6 minutes. These kind of things are things that we can improve and fix moving forward, but I don't see that it's to our benefit after going through all of this exercise and all of the outreach to stall any further. So I am in support of moving this forward at this time, and I believe that you can, in receiving comments moving forward, make those adjustments. You know, not major realignments at this point, but you know, make the routes that you've settled on more effective with minor tweaks. And I think that this creates a situation where we can serve our general ridership better moving forward into the future. So also for me, thank you guys for your work.
Director Jennings.
Thank you very much. I too want to thank you for your work. I think you've done a great job of outreach, and I think it's shown just by the number of people who showed up here tonight that you've listened to the people and you've made the adjustments to the best of your ability up to this point. I think my question kind of goes back to Member Cerna's, how nimble and how quickly can we move? And I just want to kind of talk about the tweaks and the improvements that we're talking about making on a monthly basis. And maybe we can speak a little bit clearer as to how that happens and how it's implemented and how it's communicated to the public so that we're all on the same page, that we're not into a system that we're married to. We can adjust and make the adjustments on a frequent basis.
So I think there's varying levels of degrees of changes that we could make. There's very simple schedule changes that we would be able to make that we could probably do at a staff level, I believe. But more stringent changes or bigger changes we would have to do quarterly. We would have to do, it would be a service change process that we would go through. So every quarter, you know, we would identify.
Yeah, maybe James, you know, we will, you know, present this to board every month to say what specific changes or traits we would like to, you know, implement based on the feedback from the customers.
Right.
You know, I think today, you know, a couple major, you know, changes like Route 13 and, you know. Anyway, Director Cerna already made the executive decision for us, so we really appreciate that, and I really want to appreciate Director Budge and Attorney about the concern about the Sunrise Station. This is a major station, and we did not, you know, utilize that to its full potential. This is kind of like a middle-term to long-term, you know, plan. We do have those type of, you know, in our mind. Just want, yeah.
So I know it's going to come here monthly. I got that piece. I also heard the quarterly piece. You know, at least I heard a piece of it. I'm probably more interested in knowing from the customer's perspective
Okay.
how they can suggest change and how they can be involved in the process
Okay.
of suggesting change, and how that then in turn gets to us so that we can then see a culmination of the changes that they're suggesting. So I'm really interested in the customer being put first
Okay.
in order to inform us.
So, no matter what happens after adoption, our public outreach continues. Our public outreach doesn't end either tonight or whenever the board votes to adopt. So we will continuously be out over, through the duration of implementation, talking to the customers. Customers will be responding to us via email or phone calls. So we will be capturing all those comments and concerns like we've done leading up to tonight. And we will use those to help us make those improvements to the system as necessary. So is that
It kind of does, and I guess my question is what is the next door of RT?
So,
not that I'm suggesting that you create a next door.
Called
but
customer
I'm just
advocacy.
I'm trying to understand what methodology do they use in order to be able to communicate effectively to us, and that we can get the word
So-
out that this is how we can hear you.
I know our customer service folks have a very large database of customers and emails, customer advocacy, as James was just alluding to. So we have a database that we reach out. We're able to communicate with our riders via that particular database. But through this process, we've been growing that database. We've added a lot of people to that outreach list. So, James, I don't know if there's anything else we need to add on that, or. But that's really the big part.
What if we give you a report later on? What would be a next door RT look like? This actually is a major concern from us too. How we can really reach the heart and minds of our constituents, and this has been a big challenge. We made some improvements, and we will present some more detailed plan. Deborah, a communication team will try to present.
And I'm good with that. I think the point I really want to make is, as we talk about the changes that have been made to date, and we talk about the changes that will be made in the future, there needs to be an ongoing dialogue that's improved between us and the customer.
Yes.
In order to make sure that the customer is aware of all the changes that we're making, and also that we have heard the customer, and that they know that we have heard them, and that they are a part of the solution. So I just want to make sure that we talk about a communication plan that involves and engages our customers so that they can fully understand all the changes we're making.
Yeah, Director Jennings, one thing I might add is that this project has been a really great opportunity for us to establish some good contacts. We have customers, we have some operators, we have individuals at partner agencies, but we have riders in different neighborhoods and throughout our system that we've gotten to know really well throughout this process, who care a lot about RT and know a lot about the routes and can reach a lot of people. And of course, for our communications, we always broadcast our message electronically and through traditional media, and our door is always open. You can call up customer advocacy, send an email, whatever. Anything related to service goes to James and I. But this project's been a great opportunity to kind of meet and get to know better that layer of people that are really interested and want to be involved. We had an operator here tonight who we've spoken with about these changes.
Exactly.
And there's people everywhere that want to help us succeed and get the message out, both to existing riders and new riders. And this is going to be a tremendous change. Director Cerna illustrated very well how, folks, we have some folks with physical disabilities or learning disabilities that you can see they're really going to need a personal touch for learning the new system. So there's a tremendous amount of work to be done, and we've been having weekly coordination meetings on facilities and access and infrastructure with our communications team, with our operations people who will be doing the route training and the driver training. And
Okay.
Of course, till the decision's made, it's all sort of preliminary, but we're really actually looking forward to, in the lead up to the implementation, to kind of doubling down and working with a lot of these contacts we've built to help spread the word and educate customers.
So just the last thing I'll say is, you made in your presentation, you talked about ridership will go down in the beginning and then it'll take a year for it to come back up. And I think with the effective communication plan of working with our customers, working with our riders, I believe it won't take a year for it to go up if we do a good job of communicating effectively and working with them and understanding exactly what their needs are and making those adjustments and being more nimble and more quick in moving forward with those adjustments. I don't think it'll take a year. So that would be my goal.
Thank you. And we agree. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that it doesn't take a year. Marketing, communication is key.
Director Miller.
Well, thank you, Chair. I'll be short. And again, I do want to thank you, James 1 and James 2. You can decide which number you are. And I'd also like to thank the folks, our customers, our riders that came out tonight. I noticed the numbers have dwindled a lot, but you guys hung out to the bitter end, so I appreciate that. As far as outreach, we had RT folks at Neighborhood Area 10 and Citrus Heights tonight.
Yeah, and I think he's here, or he came back.
Yeah. Oh, already done. So, but I got the thumbs up by text. You know, the genesis of this was back in 2010, and I think Don was the only other one on the board at that time when we cut service dramatically. I mean, that was one of the hardest things for me. I got involved to see transit improve, and I was board chair and had to lay people off, and it was tough. But one of the things that came up when we talked about restoring service, you know, staff had a plan. We're going to put all these bus routes back in place. We said, no, it obviously isn't working. Let's look at just having assets, and what are we going to do with these assets to provide bus service here, and you've done that. And we also knew that when you did that, the same routes, the high performance routes, would come back. And so that was a no-brainer. We're going to have problems. That's something we all can promise. But I think knowing that and being willing to be nimble and change is going to be to our advantage. So don't stop with the outreach. We're not going to fix everything for Rancho Cordova tonight. Oh, darn, Linda left.
She'll be back.
And again, if we wait for perfection, we're never going to launch. So I do support this next step for regional transit and continuous improvement. I mean, that's what we do. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Director Cerna.
Thank you. So I'll start by saying that while I appreciate the sense of interest and urgency to get this done tonight, I think thematically, I mean, we've enjoyed a tremendous amount of patience and outreach and willingness to take the time necessary to hear people. And you're hearing from us tonight about this, and I know it's been a long evening. But I don't know that there's anything we are going to necessarily lose if we were to wait at least one more meeting and let you come back, not just with regards to the comments that I made, but you heard from other of my colleagues that they have some outstanding concerns. I believe to a person, everyone on this board wants to support the fine work that you've completed. But unless someone can tell me otherwise, why this has to be done tonight and couldn't be done at the next meeting, to give staff some time to think carefully about the 80 and 84, the Rancho Cordova issues that Director Budge mentioned. I'm satisfied with what was said about the realignment of the 68. I believe there was some mention about adjusting PM peak for 13. But as a courtesy to this board, I think we owe it to ourselves and those that we represent to not rush the actual decision. So unless someone can tell me we're going to miss some extraordinary deadline by taking the time to just have one more hearing on this and have a quick presentation, if it's the will of this board to do this, on response to some of these outstanding concerns. I'm going to make the substitute motion, look for a second, that we do exactly that we take the time, wait one more meeting, and have you come back and address some of these outstanding issues.
Second.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to speak to the motion.
Yes.
Yeah, just, and again, recognizing the lateness of the hour, but I think Director Cerna said it very well, that I think we recognize the good work. All of us have stated that one way or the other, all those that have spoken. And I would hate to see for, the lack of, the opportunity. Again, this was the board hearing. We had all the staff work up, all that good work. We had from the community. We heard many folks spoke here this evening. And I think having the opportunity to have a little more time and still keep RT going forward doesn't seem to me that the world's going to stop spinning if we have the opportunity. So I would support the motion that's been made here.
Okay, thank you. I will say that I before I call the question, have had the privilege of sitting through many of your presentations, met with hundreds of constituents on this issue. I think that all of the comments that have been said as far as, is it perfect? You're never going to get it perfect. That's the nature of these types of efforts. Is this really close? I think you guys have done a great job. I think I have seen literally staff pivot when the community concerns came up. That's why I do support the original motion. I will not be supporting the substitute motion. I think that it is time to implement. It's not like we're not your grandfather's RT. We're not going to do this every 30 years. This is an ongoing exercise. There will be no stop to it, and we will continue to respond to our customers, and I'm confident that we can do that in a way that we're nimble enough and that we are creative enough that we can continue to do that, but we need to move forward, in my opinion. So with that, I will call the question of the substitute motion, and if we could do a roll call vote, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely. On the substitute motion, Director Budge.
Yes.
Director Hansen.
No.
Director Harris.
No.
Director Howell.
No.
Director Hume.
No.
Director Jennings.
No.
Director Miller.
No.
Director Natoli.
Aye.
Director Chenier is marked as being absent. Director Cerna.
Aye.
Chair Kennedy.
No.
And the motion fails, right?
Okay, then we will go to the original motion that was on the floor, and we will again do a roll call vote, please.
On the original motion, Director Budge.
No.
Director Hansen.
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
Director Howell.
Yes.
Director Hume.
Aye.
Director Jennings.
Yes.
Director Miller.
Aye.
Director Natoli.
No.
Director Chenier is marked as being absent. Director Cerna.
Aye.
Director Kennedy.
Aye.
Chair Kennedy, I'm sorry. With that, the motion passes at 78 votes.
Okay. Thank you. And next?
Okay.
All right.
So
That's incorrect, and the last one was too.
No, Phil voted yes.
Phil.
Phil voted yes.
Yeah.
Probably meant no.
He made an
but
executive
voted
decision.
yes.
I apologize, Supervisor.
So, Mr. Chair, I know it's late, but none of this would be possible without the hard work of staff. And I just want to recognize, James and my staff and Tracy from the early on and Sarah. They've worked really hard on this, and I appreciate your support. And I want to make sure, Director Natoli and Director Budge, that your comments are not lost, and I understand, and we'll do everything we can.
To a person up here, nobody disagrees with any of that.
All right. Thank you so much.
You know that you were.
Thank you. Next item is item number 8, which is the very short and truncated general manager's report.
Very.
With your permission, Chair, and I will skip my report.
Sir, your approval ratings just went up tremendously.
Next item is item 9, the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority meeting of January 25th, 2019. There's a summary in your package if Director Hume has anything to add.
Newbie.
He's shaking his head, so
Next
we'll
item.
move on to item 10. Paratransit Inc. Board of Directors meeting of January 30th. Written summary in your package if Director Hume has anything to add. Again,
Nope.
shaking his head no. Item number 11, Capitol Corridor Joint Powers Authority meeting of February 13th. If either Chair Kennedy or Director Miller have anything to add.
Well, I didn't write the meeting summary, so good job, Patrick. Actually, I know it was Alva.
I believe that's a no.
No.
And an announcement that we have canceled closed session, so the board.
Oh, all right.
In that case, I'd like to go back to the paratransit item, please.
Any comments, questions of the board? Then I believe we stand adjourned.
9 o'clock.
You too.